What is up, everybody? Welcome to Stat Diggers UFC 268. Going to be breaking it all down, going through all 14 fights, another big card, and this card is phenomenal. On paper, it looks really good, but after digging into it, I'm even more excited for this fight card. This card has a ton of great fights, and I am here as always with the man behind the stats, Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, what is up? Are you looking forward to UFC 268? We got back-to-back banger of a cards.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? This is the last week's card was fantastic. This one is great. The main event on this one is going to be so great. We're going to get to hear so much trash talk. We're going to get to hear so much hype before the rematch here of Covington and Usman. Can't wait to talk about all 50. We got 15 fights again, dude.
I think 14 or 15. Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, man. So we got our work cut out for us tonight. But guess what? We've done the work. You've watched all the tape. I've watched a little bit of tape. I got stats on 15 fights, man. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm pretty. This is probably the most prepared I've been for a show. Got everything done. I'm going to be recording my full card breakdown and prediction video tonight. Hopefully some DraftKings as well. Heading to Nashville on Monday, and I want to do the least amount of work as possible on a mini vacation. So that should be fun there. So yeah, I do want to shout out the chat before we get into a quick recap of last night and then get into 268. We have Pocket in the chat. We have Carrillo in the chat as well. We have Raw, Eric. If you all can please hit the like button. I mean, much appreciated. Also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. I'm on here pretty much all week. Weezy's on here 2 times a week as well. We even went on the Saturday stream, live betting, live commentary. So make sure you are subscribed to not miss out on all that great content. We got Steve in the chat as well. We have Ben. We have Jay. Thank you all so much for hanging out on a Sunday on Halloween. Happy Halloween, by the way, everybody, as well. Michael in the chat, Robot Chicken Wings. Shout out to all of you guys there. So we'll get into a recap of last night. Shout out to James. I see you there as well, James. PSSA. Let's get into it. Weezy, go ahead and start on your night. I know we had some really bad beats, but yeah, it was a fun card though.
Yeah, it was a really fun card. Great fights. I mean, those last couple fights, seeing Glover, get the championship at 40, 42, 43?
42, yeah.
Yeah, 42. He just turned 42, and he was, amazing. I mean, definitely was rooting for him. We were talking about that. Jan just made a huge mistake going for that Kimura, wound up on the bottom, and then I think he just knew it was over. The Sandhagen Jan fight was just fantastic. That was a classic striking battle between two amazing strikers. Great fight. Up and down the card, we had a lot of great stuff. I got absolutely rinsed betting. I had a big bet on Virna Jandiroba, which was looking absolutely fantastic after the first round, and then it just kind of fell apart like a Chinese motorcycle after she came out in the second there. So, that really murdered my night. And then I had a bad beat on Duraev inside the distance. I don't know how that fight didn't get stopped. I had a bad beat on the Duraev-Kopylov fight not going the distance. I mean, I've never seen a fight not finish when both fighters with 3 minutes left in the third have their hands on their knees in the middle of the octagon. It was amazing. And then we had a reffing problem in a fight, didn't we, Brady?
Oh yeah.
You want to start? I don't know. I
just couldn't believe what I was watching. Like the guy I thought we were going to see the very first death in the octagon. Like that was horrible. And that's like the first time I've ever seen where a ref was like relieved of his duties for the rest of the night.
Yeah, I've been marched out of a couple jobs that I used to have that I got fired from in the exact same manner, where it's like, Luizos, you're not even going to be able to finish the day's work. You're leaving. You suck. And that was Vyacheslav Kisiev, somebody that hopefully we never see any more of in a UFC octagon or in any octagon, any cage, any ring, anywhere in the world. We should boo this man collectively. We should. Oh, it was just awful. After losing that and then the bad beat against Duraev, I really thought Duraev would finish that fight. I knew it was going to be a really rough day, and it wound up being exactly that. But hey, here we are. New week, another fantastic pay-per-view card, a great main event. We got to get into it.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to shout out Carrillo though with a big dono, $20. Let's rebound. Lost my ass in DK, but trust in the process. Yeah, DK I didn't do terrible. But yeah, yeah. Shout out to Carrillo. I see you in here pretty much every week, so shout out to him and thank you for the dono and thank you for hanging out. But yeah, it was a weird week because for me, I was on pace to have like my worst betting day ever. It was a really really bad start. So first, I consider this a bad beat. So I had the Petrosky Zhang who under 2.5 rounds. And we talk about this, Weezy, how the worst feeling ever is when you have that under 2.5 rounds and then the fight finishes and you don't hit that under 2.5 rounds. And I said that to you the one day. I was like, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, you remember it. And it happened to me two times in 1 week. Happened to me on the Contender Series and then in the Yazong fight. And then I also had a half unit bet on Yazong, who this was a horrible bet. I was fully expecting Yazong to make improvements, and sometimes you just gotta sit back and laugh, man. I mean, this is a guy that was 23 years old last time we seen him, and I was like, hey, train at Tiger Muay Thai. Hey, we're gonna see some improvements. He can't be any worse, right? And he shows up, and he looks worse than he had 3 years back. Like, what was this guy doing for 3 years? What was he doing? That was horrible, and he should be cut. But yeah, Petrosky got the submission with a couple seconds left, but that did not help me because I had the under, not the fight doesn't go. And then we move on. Next bad beat, man. The Elijah Zaleski dos Santos, Saint Denis, under 2.5 rounds. I got a really good price, -120. And I'm not usually one to say this, but this was a bet that I'd bet again. I would bet this again all day. Zaleski dos Santos almost finished the guy a good like 4 or 5 times in the round. I thought the ref could have stopped it a good amount of times. And then in that third round, he hurt him again. Zaleski dos Santos is too tired to finish him. And then the ref takes a point in the third round for some reason. But yeah, really weird fight, really weird reffing. But, glad to see that guy that was reffing did not ref for the rest of the night and probably shouldn't ref for the rest of ever. So that happened. And then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I have Duraev, Kopylov fight doesn't go to decision. This is my favorite bet of the night. This is probably my most confident bet. Duraev doesn't wrestle for the first round. I don't know why. Very competitive first round. I scored it for him, though. And then he gets dropped in round 2. And then he finally decides to go for a takedown. And guess what? He's in mount with 3.5 minutes left. He about kills Roman Kopylov. And the fight, goes into the third round. And then in the third round, both guys can barely walk. Kopylov's almost dead. Duraev's gassed out really bad. And then it somehow goes to decision. So that happened. So my prelims were terrible. But what I will say is I did rebound and get back a little bit. So I did have the Olazechuk Shamil Gamzatov fight doesn't go +145, half a unit. That did help a little bit. But we got into the main card. I had Khamzat Chimaev to win in rounds 1 or rounds 2, -110, 1 unit on that. That helped. And then I also had my biggest bet of the night, which was Alexander Volkov, 3 units, -275. So I'm so thankful Volkov did come through. And I will say that Volkov, that was the worst I've ever seen him. I don't know what was up with him. He was like gassed out after like the first couple minutes of the fight, breathing with his mouth open. He looked bad, but he still won regardless. So it looked initially like it was going to be my worst betting night ever. But, Volkov did save the day as did Chimaev. So at least that happened as well. But regardless, a little bit of a loss. We move on to 268 here. And I'm really looking forward to this card, really looking forward to bouncing back as well. I already have 2 bets on this card already. One pretty big bet. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking to have maybe my next max bet of the year on this card as well. So it should be a pretty good card here for betting and a pretty good card for from watching a standpoint as well. But I say we get into it. And let's start with the very first fight of the night. We have Melsik Bagdasaryan going against Bruno Souza. We have Bagdasaryan, 29 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. Bruno Souza, 25 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Bagdasaryan made his UFC debut against Colin England, looked really good. The striking looked phenomenal. His takedown defense looked great. He got taken down once, got back up shortly after. He looked good. Got a very nice head kick knockout in the second round. Almost finished England in the first round as well. Melsik Bagdasaryan, this guy's the real deal. I'm very high on Melsik Bagdasaryan. Had a nice win on the Contender Series as well. And that was the very first time we saw him go to decision, I believe, in his career. There were questions about his cardio. He did slow down a little bit as the fight went on, but still was able to keep a pretty high pace. Got taken down here or there, but his takedown defense looked okay. His get-up game looked good as well. And he's still pretty young, 29 years old. As far as Bruno Souza, 25 years old, 5'7", very young guy, 70-inch reach, and he's going to be making his UFC debut here. He is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, but I go back and look at some of his fights, man. Camelo Kirk, split decision win. I did score that fight for Kirk. And then also Mike Hamill. In that fight, he was literally losing every single second of that fight, getting dominated, and then Hamill hits him in the back of the head. It's a disqualification. So he very well could be like 8-3. But yeah, he's 5-0 in his last 5 fights, as is Bagdasaryan. So Uncle Weezy, first fight of the night here. I'm not sure if they're going to change up the bout order yet. This fight was just announced like a couple days ago. But what are you liking for this one here?
Yeah, so Bagdasaryan's actually older than this guy Sosa. Sosa's only 25. They got the same reach. Sosa a little more experienced, 4 more professional fights, about 100 more minutes in the cage. But it's Bagdasaryan who's had 2 UFC level fights, while I think Sosa's been over in LFA, right? He's been mostly in LFA recently.
Who?
Sosa, Bruno Sosa.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure, but I think.
I think it's LFA where he was coming out of. So he's fighting some pretty good regional scene competition. But look at the finish rates. Bagdasaryan's finished 5 of his 6 wins, all of them by knockout, and he's been finishing his only loss by submission. And then we got Sosa with only a 30% finish rate, very low. 20% by sub, 10% by knockout, and he has not been finished in his only loss. So we see Bagdasaryan's striking numbers jumping off the page here. 63% accuracy, 6.7 significant strikes landed per minute, only 3.76 absorbed. So, a positive over 3 or just under 3 significant strike differential, showing 52.6% striking defense. Obviously, we don't have any statistics on Bruno Sosa yet. Bagdasaryan over 2 on his takedown attempts, but he does have 21% control time while only yielding 11% control time. Bagdasaryan is just a kickboxer with an absolute ton of power, and not much in the way of conditioning. His conditioning is not good. This guy throws 100% power into every one of his strikes that he offers, so you just can't have a gas tank going like that. You have to use some kind of moderation when you want to go a full 15 minutes. But this guy hits so hard, he almost never has to go a full 15 minutes. He's only seen decision once. So, and then I don't know much about this Sosa. We do know that the competition that Bagdasaryan has beaten thus far, Dennis Bazookia and then Colin Anglin in his UFC debut, he's probably fighting the same level of competition, if not worse, than Bruno Sosa, because these guys that Bagdasaryan has beaten, and I mean Bazookia and Anglin, they're basically regional scene fighters as well. And Sosa's been on the regional scene fighting guys like Camwella Kirk and Johns' brother Elijah Johns, and some Guillermo Santos even is not bad. And Hamill, obviously, he was losing that fight. So it does look like if Sosa can't get this to the ground, it's going to be an easy knockout for Melsick. But can you talk to me a little bit about what you've seen out of Sosa?
Yeah, so I'd like to watch a little bit more tape on him, but I was able to watch 3 of his fights. I watched the Hamill one, the Kirk one, and the Garcia one. Actually, 4. There's one more before the Hamill one as well. But yeah, I just don't see it with this guy. Like, I don't think he has what it takes to win this fight. You take a look at him; he doesn't go for takedowns. I've seen him go for maybe 1 takedown, and it was after somebody was already initiating the takedowns. He got him down, and then you have kind of reversing position and taking him down. So he doesn't really go to his wrestling that often. And there's like a lot of cage time in the fights I watch. A lot of them do good decision, like you mentioned. And he's basically a striker that doesn't really strike much. He kind of has a lot of kicks that do work well, but he doesn't really throw much with his hands. I think if this is on the feet, like it's Melsick all day, and it's really not even close. I think for Souza to have success here, he's going to need to get the takedowns, and that's not something I've seen. Again, I've only watched 4 fights. He has 11 of them. Hopefully, I'm able to find more, but from what I've seen, he just doesn't go to the takedowns really at all, and if he doesn't in this fight, he's going to get butchered, man. I mean, Bagdasaryan, this guy's a savage on the feet. He comes forward looking for the early finish. He even did it in the Anglin fight as well. Anglin was able to survive that little initial storm he brought, and then he ended up almost finishing him in the first, and then finished him in the second with a head kick. Bagdasaryan, I believe he has like 4 wins under 60 seconds. Like, this guy is very good. And on top of that, like, the only thing I could say about him was potential cardio issues, and maybe he does. He does slow down as the fight goes on. And then, how good is his takedown defense? It looks good. It looked really good against Colin England. He did get taken down. He was able to get right back up. That's good news. Like I said, on the Contender Series, stuffed some takedowns. If he got taken down, he was able to get back up. I love the volume. I love the power. I think it's a really bad matchup for Souza, especially if he doesn't go to that wrestling grappling. So, yeah, I like Bogdasarian quite a bit here. And we do take a look at the line, and we see that Bogdasarian opened up minus 185. I think that's pretty generous. And he immediately went to minus 235. He's now minus 255. And then we also see that Souza opened up plus 160. He's now plus 215. On other books, we see the Bogdasarian's minus 280 on 5 dimes. So, yeah, I do expect that minus 255 not to be there that long. I expect the line to keep getting wider and wider. But from what I've seen, Weezy, I'm just not impressed with Souza. I don't really think he has the game, the style to really pose many problems on Bogdasarian here, especially if he doesn't use his wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're talking about 4 first-round knockouts for this guy, and it's not just like the first couple of minutes. It's 14 seconds, 32 seconds, 9 seconds, and then not to be outdone, he goes for 7 seconds. So I mean, and he's starching fools here though. 0-0, 3-5, 0-0, and 4-3. So no big deal. He gets onto the Contender Series. Bazookia doesn't go away. It winds up being a decision. And then, England did take him down, but Bogdasarian got right back up. And it's like this dude swinging a baseball bat when he's kicking. So yeah, you got to believe that this is going to be Bogdasarian all day. What did you say the line was?
Minus 255 right now, which I still think that's pretty generous, and I think it's going to move.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. That feels like, just from what I've seen from Melsick, I'm going to have to look at Bruno some as well, see if there's anything that you missed. But if this is on the feet, it should be pretty easy for Melsick.
Yeah, unless Souza's like some phenomenal black belt with high school wrestling background that I'm missing. But I watched, a good 4 fights and a decent sample size, man. I just didn't see, any of that. So from what I've seen, he's like a striker that like very low volume. So if he comes in there and does that against Melsick, especially on short notice, I think it's gonna be a tough night, man.
Yeah, agreed. Melsick will just march him down and clean his clock.
All right, we got a Dream Team in the chat. How many epic Weezy quotes did I miss? Maybe 1 so far?
I don't know, man. And I didn't want to just like light up the airwaves with profanities while I was talking about that bum Vyacheslav Kisiev. You suck. But yeah, other than that, let's move on to the next fight.
Yeah, he not only sucks at reffing, he was also a fighter. I believe he was 0 for 5, all finished losses, man.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so he sucks at more than one thing, which is something you would expect out of somebody that incompetent.
Just a horrible person. We got Big Show in the chat, though. What's good, boys? What is up, Big Show? I saw Billy in here as well. Billy was big on I think he was really big on Melsick in his debut.
Huge on Melsick. He cashed a big bet on him.
I think we talked about it on Stat Diggers. I think he was like all over Melsick. So yeah, shout out to Billy for that call. Looks like he's right back on him as well. But we'll move on to the next fight here, and we have, if I can get there. So we have Chris Curtis going against Phil Hawes. We have Chris Curtis, 34 years old, 5'10", with a 75-inch reach. Phil Hawes, 32 years old, 6 foot, with a 77-inch reach. So Chris Curtis, 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He's going to be making his UFC debut here. He actually fought on the Contender Series. I went back and watched that fight. I forgot how good his knockout was on the Contender Series. I think that was probably one of the biggest snubs I've ever seen. Beautiful, beautiful knockout by Curtis, but is finally getting his opportunity here and probably rightfully deserved. Going against Phil Hawes, who was also 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He did make his UFC debut, I believe, against Jacob Malkoun, won by knockout. He won by decision against Nasruddin Imavov, and then won by decision against Kyle Dawkins. So I had a really big bet on Phil Hawes against Deron Winn. And to be honest, I was more confident in Phil Hawes against Deron Winn than I am here against Curtis. But I think this is still a very winnable fight for Phil Hawes, as we do see him as the second biggest favorite on the card. So Uncle Weezy, let's get into this one here. I think it's going to be a pretty fun one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we look at the tail of the tape, Phil Hawes 32, Curtis 34. Phil Hawes an inch taller, and he's going to have 2 inches of reach here, fighting out of Sanford MMA. Chris Curtis out of Team Vision. When we watched Chris Curtis on the Contender Series, we saw Sam Alvey in his corner. So I don't know if he's still with this Team Vision or if he's isn't Alvey over at Extreme Couture now, or was he in Portland over there? I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Curtis way more experienced here. 21 more fights than Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes 13 fights, Curtis 34. Curtis 26-8, Hawes 11-2, and Curtis has been in the game about 5 more years as a pro. And then we see Hawes with a much bigger percentage of his career at the UFC level. Both these guys, pretty good finishers. Hawes an 82% finish rate, and Curtis 58% finish rate. Hawes has been finished in both of his losses, and Curtis has been finished in 2 of his 8 losses. So Curtis is definitely very hard to finish. When we look at the striking numbers, we got a 1-fight sample size here for Curtis. He outboxed a guy named Sean Lally, I think. Landed 7.23 per minute, absorbed 5.34, showed over 60% striking defense and 70% striking accuracy. Won the fight with a beautiful spinning or a hook kick that was just absolutely gorgeous, knocked the guy on his ass, and then he finished the fight. Phil Hawes showing a lot of power in his own right on offense here, landing a knockdown on 1.5% of the significant strikes that he's landed. So that's 2 knockdowns in only 134 significant strikes, landing 3.44, absorbing 3.29, and showing about 53% striking defense, and he has been knocked down once. So Curtis is a really good boxer. That really seems to be his base from what I've seen. He is very susceptible to leg kicks, and that is probably going to be something that we're going to be seeing out of Hawes on the feet here. Most of these boxers are very heavy on their lead leg, so you can really bust up their lead leg. And Curtis, I think, will fight out of both stances, but it has him listed here as an orthodox fighter. So Hawes, though, is a very good wrestler, so we could potentially see him trying to get this fight to the ground. 7 of 18 on his takedown attempts, about 39% accuracy. He's averaging 2.7 per 15 minutes and getting 43% control time. So Hawes is not only capable of controlling his opponent on the ground, but up against the cage as well, which we saw a lot in the Imavov fight. So Hawes, I haven't seen much of Chris Curtis's takedown defense. That's something you're going to have to talk to me about, Brady. But, that's going to be one of the things that we really have to look at here, because Chris Curtis is very good on the feet. He is a very good boxer. He's got really crisp hands, really good technical striker. So, Hawes is powerful, but he's not technically great at this point yet. So, we could see him having a disadvantage potentially on the feet, even though he's very powerful. I guess it just depends on how much Hawes pressures, how good Chris Curtis's takedown defense is. Because if Curtis's takedown defense is serviceable, he should be able to keep this fight standing, and it might be a little bit closer than people think. If we look at the strength of schedule stats, Hawes not fighting particularly experienced competition, beating guys with a 1.25 and 0.25 record. So at least he's beating guys with a winning record. Losing the guys with winning records as well. Both these guys on 5-fight winning streaks. But, this does seem to be where if Hawes can have his way controlling Curtis on the fence and on the ground, it'll make it a lot easier for him here, because Chris Curtis has got a really nice stand-up. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so to answer your question, Chris Curtis's takedown defense is not great. I've seen him taken down multiple times, seen him controlled against the cage as well. So that's probably why we do see Hawes as a big favorite. But, the thing with Hawes is, we have seen, a lot. We have seen him slow down as the fight goes on. For example, the Imavov fight, he kind of implemented that game plan of, holding his opponent Imavov against the cage for, nearly 15 minutes, took him down here or there. He was very tired in that third round. Imavov was able to hurt him really bad in that third round as well. Hawes was able to survive and win a decision. Even in there was the Julian Marquez fight. He got tired and about gassed out in like the second round as well. So I still have some question marks about his cardio, but it was really nice to see that his cardio looked a lot better in the Kyle Dawkins fight. But, Kyle Dawkins didn't really put up a ton of resistance. So, it's an interesting fight here. I think Phil Hawes is going to, win. I think he's the rightful favorite. But if he does gas out like he has in the past, Chris Curtis, one thing about him is his gas tank's very good. His volume is very good, but I just think the hole in Chris Curtis's game is that takedown defense, and I think that's why we see Hawes as a pretty big favorite here. But yeah, like I said earlier, I was more confident in Phil Hawes against Deron Winn. I was actually more confident in Hawes to get a finish as well against Deron Winn, whereas Chris Curtis, he's very tough. He's only been knocked out once, and the dude has, like you said, a ton of fights, 34 fights. He's only been knocked out once. So I'm kind of maybe a contrarian take here, but I'm kind of thinking Phil Hawes wins another decision. I know Phil Hawes is very dangerous anywhere the fight goes, but Phil Hawes, we have seen him win decisions in his last 2 fights. I think he's going to kind of grind out a decision win here. Maybe it does get sketchy in the 3rd round. I'll tell you one thing, though. I don't really love the money line on Phil Hawes, because if he does gas out bad, like we haven't seen him in the past, Chris Curtis is going to be very live in that 3rd round. But I think Phil Hawes is the rightful favorite. I think he's going to use his wrestling, very good wrestling background, very strong as well. And on top of that, Chris Curtis is coming up a weight class to 185. He has fought at 185 before, though, so I don't think it's like a big deal, but still, Phil Hawes is going to be the bigger guy. So, yeah, I like Phil Hawes to win, and I actually like Phil Hawes to win by decision, but I can probably tell you that I won't have a bet on this fight. We see Phil Hawes opening up minus 350. He is now minus 330. And yeah, I just think that's too wide. I think Phil Hawes wins. I think he's a rightful favorite, but it could get sketchy if Phil Hawes does not get him out of there. And I kind of don't think he does. So give me Phil Hawes to win. Maybe 30-27, 29-20 at the very least if he does drop that 3rd round. But yeah, I like Hawes here.
Yeah, I do too, but the thing is, I see why you liked Hawes over Winn more, because Winn's a one-dimensional wrestler, right? And Hawes has got really good takedown defense. So he's way better than Winn on the feet. So this is a case where Curtis is better than him on the feet, and Hawes, being somebody who has struggled with conditioning in the past, might have to go to that wrestling heavy game plan. If he doesn't finish the fight in the first 2 rounds, Curtis is going to be live in the 3rd. And we've seen Hawes hurt before, especially by Imavov. So very interesting. Could be if you're on Hawes, you might just want to hedge with a 3rd round Curtis shot, which you probably get 1,800 on, because he's a big underdog.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't have any props out yet. We do by this time. At one point on one of the shows, they came out like mid-show. If they do, we'll touch on it. But I think the over, hopefully, because it's Phil Hawes, I'm hoping they kind of set the over 1.5 at 1.5 rounds. And at that point, I'd like the over 1.5.
That's interesting, because this guy Curtis just flat out doesn't get finished. 34 fights, he's been finished twice. And as somebody in the, I think it was Jack Attack said in the chat, that came way back in his career. So, yeah. Is Curtis a welterweight?
Wait, what did you say? Curtis?
Yeah, because Tristan just said Curtis is a welterweight.
Yeah, he
realized that.
Yeah, he's been fighting at 170, but now he's moving up to 185. But he's fought at 185 before.
Okay, he has fought there before. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are just kind of in between. They have to cut too much weight to make 185. So.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, it should be a fun fight there. Let us move on, though. We have another fight. This is probably a fight that I think could go under the radar. I think this is going to be a very good one. We have CJ Vergara going against Ode Osborne. Vergara, he is 30 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. Ode Osborne, 29 years old, 5'7" with a 73-inch reach. This guy, Ode Osborne, is huge for the division, going to have a massive 5-inch reach advantage and also a 1-inch height advantage as well. So CJ Vergara, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. As you see it there, all 5 of those coming by knockout. This guy's very dangerous. He went on the Contender Series, got a very early knockout. I believe it was like under a minute as well. Landed a very nice shot to get Bruno Correa out of there. So that was impressive. And obviously got a contract. And obviously he is fighting here against Ode Osborne, who is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He had a submission loss to Brian Kelleher in his UFC debut, had a knockout win over Jerome Rivera, and then had a knockout loss against Manel Kopp. So, yeah, this one has violence written all over it. This is a violent spot that I have circled. I think someone's getting finished here. I think this fight's going to be very, very fun and exciting for as long as it lasts.
Yeah, these guys' last 10 combined fights have all finished inside the distance. CJ Vergara, 5 straight knockouts. Ode Osborne, a loss by knockout, a win by knockout, a loss by sub, and then 2 wins by sub. And you do like seeing that Vergara has been subbed before, and you like seeing that Ode Osborne has been finished in 3 of his 4 losses. So, we definitely got some guys here that do like to finish. 88% finish rate for Osborne, 67% finish rate for Vergara. Vergara really more of a kickboxer, while Osborne has finished 4 fights by submission and 4 fights by knockout. So he's very dangerous everywhere. Osborne, the more experienced fighter, even though both of these guys have been a pro about the same time, it's Vergara with more minutes because Odi Osborne's average fight time as a professional is 4.54 minutes. Another reason to love the under there. Only 12 minutes of cage time for Odi Osborne in 4 UFC fights. So that just screams violence. And then you see Vergara in the 1 fight sample size. So it's a 1 fight sample size. We can't get too excited about it. I mean, the guy's knocking his opponent down on 20% of the significant strikes that he lands. I mean, like the best guys in the UFC have a 3%, knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. This guy's 20. So, obviously that's going to regress back to the mean a little bit, but he showed some fantastic striking, landing 14.63 and absorbing only 4.39 per minute. He stuffed the only takedown against him, while Odi Osborne is outlanding his opponents 4.12 to 3.4, 52% striking accuracy, a ton of power, showing 2 knockdowns in 52 significant strikes landed. It's fantastic. 1.19 knockdowns per 15 minutes, while Vergara averaging 43.9 knockdowns per 15 minutes. So obviously a very small sample size there of less than 1 minute. So yeah, very interesting here. We don't have a lot on both of these guys. Osborne's gotten the only takedown that he's shot for, but he's got less than 1% control time. So obviously not a control time monster. He's been taken down 2 times out of 6 attempts. He's fighting guys with losing competition as Osborne, while we haven't really seen anything out of Vergara yet. This is interesting. You gotta, just from what the limited sample size that we have, we do see a really good potential for this fight to finish inside the distance. And we do see potential for Odi Osborne to potentially go to his grappling here, because Vergara certainly seems to be a lot more one-dimensional than Odi does.
Yep, looks like we're kind of thinking the same thing. Odi Osborne, I went back and watched a decent amount of his fight. I think like 7 or 8 fights of his, and I only saw him shoot 1 takedown, and it was 1 for 1 on it, and that was, I believe it was against, I think it was against Manal. No, it was against drummer Vera. No, it was on the Contender Series. It was on the Contender Series, and he was able to get that. Ultimately got a sub in his fight, but yeah, watching tape on him, he's very good on the ground. His submissions are very good, but he doesn't really go for, offensive takedowns. Whenever he is getting submissions, people are actually trying to take him down. And what I will say is his ground game is like very, very impressive. So especially in this fight, I think, Vergara, I've seen him taken down easily. I've seen him controlled for about, a whole round before. He doesn't really offer anything at all off his back. I think Odi Osborne, it would be interesting if he did go to the takedowns here. If he did get it, I think he would have a lot of success, maybe even get a finish on the mat. But on the feet, I do like that Osborne's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. I think it's going to be very competitive, but I think someone does go down at some point. Osborne, he's been knocked out before. Vergara, I don't believe he's been knocked out, but he has been submitted. So yeah, if Osborne is able to get this fight down to the mat, a submission could be very likely. Like, his ground game is legit. It's just I don't like how much the lack of takedowns on his side, though. Instead of a betting aside here, though, I'm going to look to take the under. This is at 125 pounds. Kind of reminds me of the fight we had a couple weeks ago with Molina and Lacerda, where we got like the under 2.5 rounds, or fight doesn't go at like something crazy like plus 135. I feel like it's going to be the case here for this one, because it is 125 pounds, which they typically don't finish more often than not. But this is a fight I definitely do see a finish. Osborne has not seen the second round in 9 fights. Like, that's insane. I think it's going to be a very fun fight. I think it's going to be an absolute war for as long as it lasts. But I'm kind of leaning on the Odi Osborne side. He's going to be the bigger fighter. He's somebody that has fought at 145 before against Jerome Rivera. He's fought at 135 against Brian Kelleher. He fought at 125 in his last fight against Manel Kopp. This fight as well as at 125. So, yep, I like Osborne here, but not enough to really bet the money line. I think the money line, I'm going to be staying away from it. He opened up minus 150. He's now minus 170. So money's actually coming in on Osborne, but I don't know if I can trust him. He got knocked out in his last fight. I think he's the better fighter. I think he has more paths to victory, but this could be a close fight up until finish, I think. Carlos Vergara opening up plus 130, currently plus 145. We do not have lines on the over-under, but I'm assuming they're going to set it at 2.5, and I'll be looking at the under, or I'll be looking at the fight doesn't go.
I'll be looking at that as well. And, Vergara will be live for the entire time that this fight is on the feet. But, like you said, it's a 5-inch reach disadvantage. But, Vergara is, from what I saw, it reminded me a little bit of Bagdasarian. He throws everything into every punch and kick. He throws really solid body kicks. And he's just very dangerous standing up. But, yeah, I mean, I saw him in Fury FC just getting taken down over and over again and controlled, by a really low-level guy. So, if Odie does have some wrestling that he can go to here, then we could see him winning minutes on the ground and maybe extending the fight a little bit, but he could potentially get a submission down there. But as long as both these guys are on the feet, I like this fight to end quickly because they both have a ton of power.
Yeah, like on the feet, on the mat, I think the fight does. I think it does end pretty quickly as well. But let us move on to the next fight on the card. Before we do so, if you all can please smash the like button. Let's get those likes up. We're at 133 people in here hanging out on a Sunday. Really do appreciate everybody hanging out. As always, we go live every Sunday at 6:15 p.m. Eastern time. But we'll move on. And yeah, this is going to get really rough, guys, these next two fights. But we're going to get through them. And we have Alexa Kamer going against John Alon. And I would say this is the lowest level fight on the card. But the next one actually is. So we have Alexa Kamer here going against John Alon. Kamer, 26 years old, 6'1", with a 74-inch reach. John Alon, 28 years old, 6'1", with a 75-inch reach. So John Alon is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. We'll take a look at the last few fights. Alexa Kamer, he had a knockout win over Fabio Charant on the Contender Series in the second round, had a decision win over Justin Ledet, had a decision loss against William Knight, and then just recently had a split decision loss against Nikolai Negamarianu. As far as John Alon, he lost by a submission to Vinces Moreira on the Contender Series, which is not a good look. I think Moreira's been cut since then. Mike Rodriguez, no contest as well, in a fight where John Alon looked really good. He was a huge underdog. I remember that fight. Mike Rodriguez was like 9,400 on DK. I was very heavy on him. And then John Alon goes out there and pulls off the upset, but he ended up testing positive for PEDs. So I don't know what to really think of that matchup for a couple reasons. For one, he was on PEDs. He looked good. He looked strong. But on the other side, Mike Rodriguez has like a 37% takedown defense. So I don't know how much I can really take from that fight. And then he lost a decision to Roman Dolidze as well. So, yeah, to be honest, it's a really low-level fight, a fight that I'm going to stay far, far away from. But, yeah, Weezy, you looking forward to this fight?
Yeah, not really. It's not one of the fights I'm looking forward to here. Yeah, it's hard to know what to think of John Alon because this guy got submitted by Vinicius Moreira, 1-5, I believe, in the UFC. That being his only win was submitting John Alon on the. I don't know if that was a Contender Series fight.
Yeah, Contenders.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, man, that's rough that he lost to that dude. I mean, Ike Villanueva destroyed Vinicius Moreira. Ike Villanueva, and then this guy comes up, and he tests positive for like tiger blood. I told you on that before. This guy Alon, when he tested positive for performance enhancers, he tested positive for performance enhancers, and then a split decision against a good fighter in Dolidze. So it's kind of hard to know where this guy's at. So it's Allen who's going to be the more experienced fighter. He's got 12 more professional fights here than Kamer. He's got an inch on the reach advantage, and both these guys are young. Kamer's 26, Alon 28. We can expect both these guys potentially to be making improvements. We would expect them a little bit more out of Kamer just because Kamer's newer to the game here. Kamer 4 UFC fights, Alon 3. Kamer's 2-2, Alon 0-2-1. John Alon, a 92% finish rate, though, in 13 wins. Very impressive. While for Kamer, he's finished 5 of his 6 wins. Alon does have a couple of submissions on his record, while for Kamer, it's nothing but knockouts. And Alon has been finished by submission 4 times in his career. So the fact that Kamer hasn't submitted anybody, that's a good thing for Alon. That leads you to believe that maybe, he could have a slight advantage here because when we look at the striking numbers, it should be Kamer, all right? He's got a Golden Gloves background. The guy's got good hands. He's just really new to the game. It's hard to back any UFC fighter when they've got like 6-7 pro fights. I mean, we saw what happened to Zhang coming in with 3 professional fights, and then you feed him with 3 bums. Cyril Asker, the Coulter guy, and then Petrosky. Petrosky can get a lot better, but he loses to all 3 of them. And Kamer has only got 8 professional fights here. He's got great boxing, but really bad takedown defense. 50% takedown defense for Kamer, and he's been controlled about 25% of his UFC career on the ground. That's about 12 minutes on only 5 takedowns. So when he gets taken down, he's being held down for a couple of minutes each time. Alan, so this looks like it could even be kind of like a striker versus grappler matchup, which is bad because Alan's been submitted 4 times. But look at those takedown numbers for Alan, 5 of 7. He's gotten 10% control time, 71% takedown accuracy, 1.94 takedowns per 15 minutes, 1.16 submission attempts. But both these guys are being out-controlled at about a 2.5 to 1 ratio. It's going to be Kamer on the feet. If Alan can get it to the ground and kind of try to grapple Kamer, maybe he could have some success and win some minutes there. Kamer has fought the better competition thus far in the UFC. It's a hard one to call. It's one that I won't be touching with my money because Kamer's never been finished. I don't really see myself going for a violence bet here. As a matter of fact, I might even lean the over here. Yeah, man, I don't think I'm touching this one, dude. You got any angles for the crowd here?
Well, initially I thought I was going to be betting on John Alon, but after digging into it, that's not what I want to do. But first, I do want to shout out a dono in the chat. We have Jay in there with a $5 dono. Appreciate you, Jay, for hanging out. Appreciate the donation as well. But yeah, this is a 1-800-GAMBLER fight, Weezy, and I'm a little bit upset with you, man. Last week, you should have called the orderlies on me. I put a half unit on Zhang Hu. You were supposed to be there to back me up, and the orderlies did not show up, Weezy. So that's on you, man, right?
It is on me, but did I not tell you that I'm just not touching that fight? I told you that I'm not touching that fight. You were like, you said you made the bet. And I'm like, well, the bet's made. If I send the orderlies over there, they're just going to get their ass kicked again. That's what happened last time, But yeah, I couldn't touch it just because we didn't know if Hu was going to make improvements. Turns out he didn't.
He took 3 years off to improve, and he got worse. What? That's hilarious. Come on, that's funny, guys. That's hilarious.
He improved his diet, but his mixed martial arts game just did not take any steps forward.
Like, what is he, like an accountant? Like, he's not a fighter. Like, what was he doing in over 3 years? But anyway, back to this fight. This fight, man, I can't believe this. Well, I kind of been flipping back and forth. Alexa Kamor's takedown defense is not great. John Alon, like you said, his wrestling on paper is good, but going back to the Mike Rodriguez fight, that's pretty much the only fight where I saw him have a lot of success in terms of the wrestling. Even like outside of the UFC, he's not going for a ton of takedowns. Kind of relies on his striking a lot. But then again, we saw Kamor get taken down like 4 or 5 times by William Knight, get dominated there. His takedown defense looked a little bit better against Nikolai Negumereanu as well. Negumereanu was able to take him down once. It's a close fight. It's greasy. Both guys are not great. Both guys don't have good gas tanks. I favor the striking of Kamor. I favor the wrestling, the grappling of John Alon. But it's really hard to be confident in a guy that lost to freaking Vincent Morea. And not only lost, but lost in dominant fashion. But I will take the dog as far as a pick in John Alon. But yeah, I can't put my money on this one. This is a 1-800-GAMBLER. If I do even think about betting this fight, Weezy, you got to call them on me this time because this is a fight I want nothing to do with. But we do see that Alexa Kamor is the favorite, open at -150, which is definitely probably too wide. Currently -123. John Alon opened up +130, and he's now +103. So money is actually coming in on John Alon, and people are actually betting this fight, Weezy.
Yeah, and I could see why you would think that, Alon could be a decent bet here. Bad takedown defense for Kamor, the ability to be controlled down there, and Alon has shown a bit of diversity thus far, being able to take down some opponents and accrue some control time. And his striking is okay. It's just Kamor's, he's inexperienced. You can't rush guys to this level. Especially young guys. They have to be absolutely spectacular. And even then, you see a lot of them wash out. So, Yeah, I'm not like I said, man. I'm not touching them. Don't make me send the orderlies down to Tennessee this week.
Yeah, if I get too drunk, man, I better log out of all my betting accounts. I'm not betting this fight. That'd be terrible. I do not want to wake up to that the next day at all. So we'll move on though, and I'm actually going to keep the banner up because my goodness, man, this could be worse. We talked about that fight being bad. This is worse. Jean Vellante, Chris Barnett. Vellante, 36 years old, 6'3", 76-inch reach. Chris Barnett, 35 years old, 5'9", with a 74-inch reach. Yep, you heard it right. A 5'9" heavyweight. So Barnett's going to be 1 year younger. He's going to be at a good 6-inch height disadvantage, but he's in a height disadvantage pretty much every fight. He's going to have a 2-inch reach disadvantage as well. We take a look at the last few fights. Jean Vellante, a split decision loss to Sam Alvey, a split decision win over Ed Herman, a knockout loss to Mikhail Olazechuk, a submission loss to Maurice Green. I'll let you talk about that one further, Weezy. And then a decision loss to Jake Collier. As far as Chris Barnett, he made his UFC debut against Ben Rothwell and got submitted 4-1 in his last 5 fights. So this is a fight where, again, I'm staying far away from this one. Jean Vellante has he's looked terrible. No gas tank. He got outstruck by Jake Collier, got submitted by Maurice Green in one of the weirdest submissions you'll ever see in your life. A submission that I don't even know what it was, but it happened, and that's the fact that Jean Vellante has no gas tank. Chris Barnett, what I will say about him is he actually, he does look like he does get tired in the fight, but he has the better gas tank in this fight. He can go 15 minutes, no problem. That's not a problem. Cardio is not a problem for him. And then also, I do like the volume that he does bring. So, yeah, it's a close fight. I get why the line's close, but you will not see me betting on this one as well, Weezy.
Yeah, I won't be betting on this one, but I've got a great idea, right? So nobody really wants to see these guys fight, but how about we give them like a Netflix series? Because I got an idea for a TV show, Brady, that's going to knock your socks off, man. We're going to call it, it's going to be like a cop show, like a buddy cop show. We're going to call it Fat John and Huggy Bear, right? And Jean Vellante and Chris Barnett are going to be cops over in New York, where John's from, right? And like, it's going to be a little bit different than most cop shows. They're going to be buddies, and John's always going to be talking about his glory days playing football at Hofstra. And like Chris Barnett will be like volunteering his time over at the kids center. He teaches them how to break dance and stuff, and they do work for the community. And it's going to be like any other cop show, but like what's going to make this one different is that they're going to do their research. There's going to be a crime. They're going to do their research. They're going to track down the bad guy. And then when it comes time to catch the bad guy, they're going to chase the bad guy. And the bad guy's always going to get away because they both got bad conditioning and they're slow. But then every once in a while, right, we're going to see John get out there and he's going to have just enough gas and he's going to catch that bad guy. There's going to be that slow motion point where like he's just about to catch the bad guy and he dives on him and he just gets him, right? And he falls on top of him and you're like, John got him. And then the guy on the bottom chokes him out from the bottom and gets away. So and then every episode will end with those two guys in the lieutenant's office just getting chewed out about how shitty their conditioning is, about how they're slow, about how they never catch the bad guy, and it'll be like a wah wah wah, and then there's another episode. And I think it's better. I think it has a lot more potential than seeing these two guys get in the cage and fight, because who cares about that?
And Jack's saying Netflix better get you on the payroll. Yeah, if we see that show within the next couple months, man, we know where it came from. We better get a cut of that.
Dude, if Fat John and Huggy Bear gets made and I don't get my royalties, man, there's gonna be hell to pay out there. All right, this is gonna work. I think it's gonna work because they're both kind of funny dudes, like Barnett, you see him win sometimes and he'll like break dance in the middle of the cage, and like Jean Vellante, he's training over there with Sarah and Longo, and it's just fun watching Jean Vellante get yelled at by Matt Serra and Ray Longo while he's fighting. And but these guys are past their prime, man. They don't look good. Jean Vellante is not a heavyweight, man. He's just a fat light heavyweight. And Barnett is just too small for the division, but it's fun watching a short fat guy throw spinning shit and like jumping knees, and he's fun to watch, but I don't know. I think the show would be more fun to watch. I'm not even getting into the numbers, dude.
Yep. As far as a pick though, yeah, just go ahead and give me Chris Barnett. I can't pick Jean Vellante. I went back and watched his Collier fight, in a fight where he got outstruck by Collier for 3 rounds, which no shame in that, but he did slow down as the fight went on. And then I watched the Maurice Green fight, a fight where he looked okay, he knocked down Green, and then he got submitted. Barnett, he's nothing special, guys. I would not go out here and bet on this guy. I would not try to fade Jean Vellante. Barnett, what I do like about him, like I said, he comes forward. He throws volume. He does stuff, and his cardio is probably better than John Volante's, and that's going to be good enough for me to pick Barnett. But yeah, in terms of betting this fight, this is a 1-800 gambler fight if I've ever seen one. We do see that the odds are close, as they probably should be. Chris Barnett opened up as a plus 130 dog. He's now minus 111. Jean Vellante opened up as a minus 150 favorite, and he's now minus 109. So if I had to take a guess, I guess this probably does close around a pick 'em, because I really don't feel like anybody deserves to be favored in this fight.
Yeah, not really. It should be a striking match too. I mean, John Volante's only got 5 takedowns in 17 UFC fights, and Barnett's a striker. He's a Taekwondo guy. So yeah, this should be like a striking match, and Barnett's a little more flashy, a little more fun to watch, a little more explosive, especially at this point than John is. So, but if John, just like football tackles this dude and gets him to the ground, he could have some success on top if he doesn't wind up getting Vellante choked, from the top, which is it's the best, dude. I love that. If you haven't seen John Vellante get Vellante choked from the bottom by a kickboxer in Maurice Green, it's unintentional comedy. I think this fight is going to be unintentional comedy. You can watch it just for how funny it's going to be to watch these two dudes try to kick each other's ass. It's going to be great. Bet on it? No chance in hell. 1-800 gambler. I'll call the orderlies on any of you guys if you're betting this fight.
Yeah, that Green fight was hilarious. Like, the announcers were like so confused, and at one point, one of them were like, "I think you got a choke in," but Dominic Cruz is breaking it down, and there was no choke at all. It made no sense. All he was doing was like grabbing on the back of his head and just pulling it down, and he just tapped to basically exhaustion. Dominic Cruz was like,
because he didn't want to be another 90 seconds in there. He was completely exhausted, dude.
yeah, Cruz is like, I've never seen that before in my life. That's not even a real submission, something along the lines of that. And then we just see Jean Vellante, roll over, dead tired, can't even get up after the fight. You can't bet on this. You can't bet on this fight, man.
Oh man, that was so funny.
I've never seen anything like it.
I know, man. If only Vyacheslav Kisiev was reffing this bout, is the only way it could be any funny.
Oh my god. Wow.
Like Volante's tapping from exhaustion, and like Kisiev's like, no, you must keep going.
Keep going. Probably try to take a point from him for tapping, trying to get out of there. Yeah, anyway, yeah, these two fights, man, I can't believe these, but the fight card does get better. We have Carrillo saying smash the like. I agree. 150 and you hanging out. Appreciate you all. Kisiev sucks, man. Screw that guy. I never want to see him again. But yeah, somebody brought up an interesting point on this fight. Over 1.5. Yeah, I'd kind of be surprised if they set it at 1.5. I think they're probably going to know that this probably does go to a really sloppy, sweaty decision. So I think they probably do set it at 2.5. But if they do perhaps set it at 1.5, yeah, I think the over is a good look.
Yeah, I mean, these guys couldn't finish a glass of water at this point. I mean, the only way one of these guys gets finished is if they quit in the cage, or if Barnett just doesn't even show up. And like, that's like actually a thing with Barnett. Like he has not shown up to like 3 or 4 different fights. So, this is great. This is just 1-800 gambler. I mean, this is the absolute definition of why we make this joke, this fight right here.
Yeah, like I don't why is this on the card? Why is this at Madison Square Garden? I don't know. What's the motivation for putting this on the card? I don't get it.
Each of these guys have a fight left on their contract. That's got to be it,
I guess I'd put him on like UFC Vegas 42 or something like that. But no, 268. We're gonna have to watch it, guys. So yeah, I would not bet on that fight. But next we have a fight that I'm looking forward to. We have Ian Gary, the well-awaited debut, going against Jordan Williams. We have Gary, 23 years old, 6'3", Not sure on the reach. Jordan Williams, 31 years old, 6'1", with a 75-inch reach. Gary is huge for the division. He's very young, 23 years old. He's going to be about 8 years younger. He's going to have a 2-inch height advantage, and I don't know the reach, but I'm guessing he does have a reach advantage. Training at Sanford MMA for this fight. I believe he just got there, if I'm not mistaken, for this fight camp. But Gary, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Making his debut here. Jordan Williams is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut against Nasruddin Imavov, lost by decision, and then just recently lost to Mickey Gall in a fight where Gall hurt him twice. Gall got on top and submitted him shortly after. But he did have a nice win over Gregory Rodriguez by knockout. So this is a fight where, I really like what I see from Ian Gary. Like, I was shocked to go into tape, not knowing much about the guy, seeing that he's very young. I kind of expected a guy that is maybe a little bit green. But no, this guy is not green at all. It's crazy to see, what he looks like at this age, and especially training at Sanford MMA, training with killers there. I think he's going to get a lot better. I think this guy's the real deal. I think the hype on him is definitely warranted, but he's going to have a stiff test here against Jordan Williams, somebody that is very, very tough, somebody that is going to come forward and throw bombs. He may not be defensively sound. This guy's very hittable. He doesn't have any striking defense at all. I'm sure he'll talk about the numbers. I think Gary's the much better fighter. For me, it's Williams knockout or bust, and I'm kind of leaning towards Gary getting it done in probably dominant fashion. Weezy, what are you looking at for this fight?
Yeah, so we don't have a whole lot of stats. I mean, I did go back and watch the entire career of Ian Gary because people are talking about this guy, and for very good reason. I mean, he's long, he's lean, he's a really good kickboxer. The very first fight I saw of Gary's, he put his opponent on his ass with the very first 1-2 that he threw. It looked like Jermaine Durand to me dropping Aspen Ladd when they fought. I mean, he's really crisp. He's straight to the target. He hits very hard. He's had a lot of experience thus far in his career with his opponents trying to grapple him so that they don't have to stand at range with him because he's so good from there. And he's quite good with his takedown defense and get-up game. And even his jiu-jitsu and his scrambling is pretty good. He's only 23 years old, so there's going to be a lot of room for improvement for this kid. But the type of fighter that I see giving him problems at this point is somebody that would really have a big-time wrestling background and a deep gas tank to just not let this kid kickbox, right? And Jordan Williams is not that type of fighter. But let's just look at the numbers here real quick. Jordan Williams, twice his experience, 15 fights compared to Gary's 7. Although Jordan Williams has a much lower average fight time, so they've really spent about the same amount of time in the cage as a pro. Williams, 76 minutes, Gary, 70. Jordan Williams, 48 minutes of cage time in the UFC. Williams, an 89% finisher, 8 of his 9 wins coming inside the distance. While for Gary, it's 6 of his 7 wins coming inside the distance. And Jordan Williams has been finished in 3 of his 5 losses, once by submission, twice by knockout. Jordan Williams, really nice striking numbers, landing 5.97, absorbing 5.65, 50% striking accuracy, a little bit of power, 0.31 knockdowns per 15 minutes. But the big red flag, 35.66% striking defense. And that's with 276 strikes being absorbed. So that's a big problem against a guy like Gary, who is very accurate and hits very hard and is straight to the target. Jordan Williams, we were talking about the fact that he's gotten 4 of the 7 takedown attempts that he's went for here. 57.14% takedown percentage, 1.23 takedowns per 15 minutes. But the problem is, on 4 takedowns, this guy has managed about 2.5 minutes of control time. It's not enough. It's not enough time for him to win minutes and grind out perhaps a round or 2 using his grappling. And plus, like I mentioned, I have seen Ian Gary look pretty good with his defensive grappling on the tape that I've seen. Jordan Williams has absolutely fought the better brand of competition, with his last 5 fights being against Diego Herzog, Ramazan Kuramagomedov, Robocop Rodriguez, Nasruddin Imavov, who we'll talk about shortly, and Mickey Gall, while we've got Ian Gary fighting Jack Grant for 5 rounds, winning that fight by decision. He beat Rostam Akhman, who used to be in the UFC. Don't go back and watch that fight if you're uncomfortable with seeing body hair, because Rostam Akhman wears a hair shirt into the octagon. But Ian Gary knocked him out, and it was absolutely beautiful. So definitely much better branded competition for Williams. Williams a little more experienced. Both of these guys carry quite a bit of power on the feet. Jordan Williams hits very hard. And Jordan Williams is absolutely live to land a big shot. He has very heavy hands. That's why he's here. And that power should translate a little bit better at 180 or at 170 than it was at 185, which is where Jordan Williams was getting the majority of his knockdowns and knockouts, was at 185 pounds. Now he's cutting down to 170. So, and I've seen Gary hurt before. Gary has, Gary's not absolutely perfect defensively. He's been knocked down. He's been cracked a few times. So, but I still do give Gary the advantage here. He's a big favorite for a reason. A lot of hype on this kid, but it's a step up against a kid with heavy hands who's faced much better competition. So it's an interesting fight, but Ian Gary, his nickname is the Future. The future is here. This kid's only 23 years old. I'm really excited to see him make his debut.
Yep. I noticed the same thing. The only flaw I'd give for Gary, and I think he does a lot of things really good. I think he's very well-rounded, very good wrestling, grappling, striking especially. But I guess the only flaw I would give to him would be his striking defense at times. At times it's good, but at times he kind of gets a little bit careless, kind of backs up with his hands down. I don't like that. And Jordan Williams, if he's going to win this fight, it's not going to be a grinding decision where he's, getting takedowns. It's not going to be, an all-out brawl that gets into the second and third round. I think if Williams wins, it's actually going to need to be an early knockout, which, it could happen. Knockouts do happen, but I think Gary takes it here. You mentioned the 35% striking defense of Williams. Not only that, but he has no cardio. The cardio is very, very bad. Gary has great cardio. I just see Gary really having him covered everywhere. Like outside of pure power, I really don't give an advantage to Williams in this fight. Oh, experience as well. That could be big, but I like Gary here to get it done. I really like his striking, his combinations, has a very good jab. I think that jab is going to be very useful against somebody in Williams who just basically doesn't have striking defense at all. Like this is a guy that keeps his hands down, very hittable. But yeah, I do like Gary to get it done. And I want to say inside the distance, I think the interesting angle of this fight could be a potential under 2.5 or a potential fight doesn't go, because if Williams does win, I think it's going to be inside the distance. And if Gary does win, I can see a scenario though that although Williams is very, very tough, he's tough as nails, he gasses out very, very bad, and Gary's going to be fresh throughout the fight. Would not be shocked if Gary did get a late finish here. We saw Mickey Gall drop Williams twice. That is not a good look. I know Gall's improving his striking, but still, that does not really sit right with me. I know Imavov hurt him multiple times. But yeah, I like Gary here. I like him to get it done. We see that the line is pretty wide here. We see that he is the biggest favorite on the card, right in front of Phil Hawes. But Gary did open up minus 350. He's now minus 335. And then Jordan Williams opened up plus 275. He's currently plus 275 as well. So I did pull the trigger on Ian Gary. This is going to be my biggest bet on the card up until I make my next bet. But I got him at minus 325. I know I got him at minus 320. He was sitting at minus 290 on FanDuel a couple of days ago. Wish I grabbed that. But yeah, I think there is still value on this line. Like outside of a Jordan Williams knockout, I really don't see how Williams wins this fight. So yeah, give me Gary here. I'm not one to really do parlays. I'm trying to stay away from them, but I think Gary is probably my favorite parlay piece on the card if I was to do one. Not many parlay pieces on this card, but he would be that one there. So any thoughts on the fight goes or fight doesn't go? Any lean on that? I know we don't have lines out.
Yeah, no leans for me because I've seen Gary go 5 rounds and I've seen him starch dudes in the first 4 minutes, so those things are both on the table. And then Williams, he's been finishing 3 of his 5 losses, but I mean, like Nasruddin Imavov couldn't finish him. Kuramagomedov couldn't finish him. It was just weird that Gall was the one who's actually dropping him and subbing him when this guy's going 15 minutes with Imavov. Kuramagomedov, he's starching Rodriguez. It's just weird that Gall was the one that did it to him, but Gall is another one of these guys. He's very young. He made his debut in the UFC at a very young age, and some of these guys can still continue to improve, and we're seeing Mickey Gall make some improvements. Little bit of recency bias in this one. Jordan Williams, like I mentioned, he's got heavy hands, and there's a reason why his opponents have tried to take him down 20 times in 5 fights. But like I say, man, this guy, Gary, he was already so good. Now he's training at Sanford. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun one to watch. I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't have any idea. I probably would not touch time props on this one. I could see it going either way.
Yeah, what I will say and what's pretty interesting, Weezy, is that he was at 185 for the majority of his last few fights, and he cut down to 170 for the first time in a while. So maybe that weight cut, because he is diabetic and all, right? He has a hard time cutting weight. Maybe that weight cut really did affect him, and why, it probably could, right?
That definitely could be part of it because, his doctors were telling him, we'll let you fight, but we don't want you cutting any weight because I guess because he's type A diabetes. That's diabetes you're born with. That's deadly diabetes. It's a very, very serious condition that he fights with. He's the only one in the UFC who has it. So, but he worked with the Performance Institute. And all the doctors that they have with the UFC, they're very good. They assured him that he could make that cut healthy. And the funny thing was that Williams wasn't cutting any weight. There were fights that he was weighing in the 170s, I believe, for 185-pound fights because it just wasn't. He didn't want to gain weight or lose it. So maybe he might be better down here, but we certainly didn't see it in his debut at 170 here against Gall.
Yeah, fun fact, he's actually been finished 3 times at 170. He got finished
Really?
against Rodrigo Vargas at 170 back in 2014, and he got finished against Dwight Grant in 2016 at 170 as well. So that
very
that could be
interesting. Maybe that just cutting a little bit makes him less durable. That could potentially be it.
Yeah, it definitely could. But either way, this should be a very, very fun fight. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting. At 170, he's been finished 3 times, and I think he has like 6 or 7 fights at 170. So yeah, that could be something to look out for.
Yeah,
but
okay.
let's move on to the next fight. And we have Edmen Shahbazyan going against Nasruddin Imavov. We have Shahbazyan, who is 23 years old, 6'2", with a 74-inch reach. Nasruddin Imavov, 26 years old, 6'3", with a 75-inch reach. We see that Shahbazyan is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Had a knockout win over Charles Byrd, a submission win over Jack Marshman, a knockout win over Brad Tavares, a knockout loss against Derek Brunson, and then a decision loss against Jack Hermanson. As far as Nasruddin Imavov, he has 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut against Jordan Williams, 1 decision there. Had a Phil Hawes decision loss as well, and then had a knockout win over Ian Heinisch. He is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. So I think this is a very intriguing fight here. I'm looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. Weezy, what are you looking at for this one here?
2 young bucks here. Imavov 26, Shahbazyan 23. Imavov 1 inch taller, 1 inch of height, fighting out of the MMA factory in France, while we got Shahbazyan fighting out of the inimitable Glendale Fight Club under the great Edmen Tarvarian. And then we've got 13 fights for both of them. More time in the cage, though, for Imavov, but a higher percentage of the pro career at the UFC level for Shahbazyan, man. He only had 6 fights when he made his Contender Series debut, and then he rattled off, I think, 4 in a row. This kid is damn good. He's really got great hands. And the same thing for Imavov. Imavov, they call him the Russian sniper for a reason. His hands are very accurate. He had Phil Hawes on skates several times. Looked really good against Jordan Williams. This is going to be a really good one. If we look at the striking, let's first of all talk about Shahbazyan. Finished 10 of 11 pro wins. Imavov finished 8 of 10 pro wins. While Shahbazyan's been finished in 1 of 2 losses, Imavov 1 of 3 losses. He's been finished. So it's Shahbazyan landing 3.46 significant strikes a minute, absorbing 4.1, 49% striking accuracy. Very powerful is Shahbazyan, landing a knockdown on 2.55% of the total significant strikes that he's landing, averaging 1.32 knockdowns per 15 minutes. 48% striking defense, not great. While we see Imavov with a really impressive significant strike differential here, landing 4.3, but only absorbing 2.23 per minute. 58% striking defense. He's never knocked anybody down, and he's never been knocked down. But we do know that Imavov hits very hard and has had some people in trouble on the feet. If we look at the grappling stats, Shahbazyan's takedowns almost all came in 1 fight. I don't remember what fight it was. Was it the Marshman fight that he just kept taking him down, or was it another one?
Took down Marshman, yeah.
It was Marshman. Okay. So yeah, 9 of 22 on his takedown attempts. But like I say, Shabazian's a boxer first, so that was interesting when he did get all those takedowns. And then Imavov 2 of 9 on his takedown attempts. Shabazian's fights have been taking place in controlled time positions over half the time, which is very interesting. 27.5% control time for, 24.27% control time against. And for Imavov, it's actually about almost 55% of the time his fights are taking place in controlled time positions. He was held up against the cage for quite a bit of the fight against Phil Hawes. Both of these guys' takedown defense leaves a little bit to be desired. Almost 70% for Imavov, but he's being controlled a lot. While for Shabazian, it's a 55.56% takedown defense, being controlled 24% of his UFC career and being taken down 2.64 times for 15 minutes. If we look at the strength of schedule stats, this is definitely Shabazian. 1.77 ratio to 1.33 for Imavov, fighting twice as experienced competition. The wins are better and the losses are better. So, Shabazian, younger, Imavov, a little bit bigger and a little bit more reach. The experience numbers are fairly close, but I will give the edge to Shabazian. Both of these guys finishers, both of these guys somewhat durable. As for on the feet, man, it's going to be really close. And then on the ground, I just don't see this fight taking place on the ground. Neither one of these guys, first of all, Imavov, his grappling defense is good enough that we wouldn't expect Shabazian to see a hole there, and vice versa. Imavov's not a wrestler. He does get submissions, but he's really, while he's probably the more well-rounded fighter here, he's only gotten 2 takedowns in 3 fights and only managed 16% control time. So, I do expect to see this take place on the feet. I think Imavov will be the better minute winner as he throws a little bit more volume and has the better significant strike differential, and most importantly, the better striking defense. But it's Shabazian that's fighting the better brand of competition here. So it's a very interesting matchup. What are you looking at here?
Because somebody mentioned that Shabazian moved to AKA. I'm not sure if that is true.
Let's hope he did. Let's hope he did, because you're not going to get any better fighting over there at Glendale Fighting Club with Mr. Head Movement.
Yeah, for sure. But I think what it comes down to for me, Weezy, is this is kind of a tough fight to call. At first, I thought it would be all over Imavov, especially at the line. But after digging into it, I think we got to cut Shabazian some slack here. he got finished by Derek Brunson, who, what's he ranked right now? Like 2 or 3?
He's got to be top 5.
Yeah, he's top 5 for sure. I know that.
Yeah.
And then Jack Hermanson, I believe, is ranked 5 or 6 as well. So he's losing to like really good guys. Like, those are really bad matchups for a guy that is literally like 23, 22 years old at the time. So I think we got to cut him some slack there. But I really like what I see from Imavov. This guy is very well-rounded. His striking is phenomenal. His cardio is good. Takedown defense is great as well. I've seen him get some offensive takedowns as well. I guess the problem for me with Shabazian, man, is takedown defense. Like, it's not good. We've seen him slow down after the fight hits the second round, slow down bad in the Hermanson fight. He actually won the first round against Hermanson, slow down bad against Brunson as well, gassed out really bad. So I think if Imavov can kind of extend this fight, get it out of the first round, I think he can kind of take over as the fight goes on. But Shabazian, he is very, very dangerous. You talked about a 91% finish rate for Shabazian. But I don't believe Imavov has ever been knocked out. Am I correct?
You are correct, sir. Yes, he's only been subbed once, never knocked out, in 3 losses.
Yeah, I think he got submitted in his very first fight, like his MMA debut. It was like a long time ago. So yeah, that's good. He's never been knocked out. I like Imavov here. I don't want to completely, count out Shabazian because yes, he's on a 2-fight skid, but just look at who he's fighting. So I'm going to take Imavov. I don't feel like overly confident in it, but I'm going to say he does, extend this fight. And I think once it hits the second round, we're going to start to see Imavov definitely taking over. He has the much better gas tank. But yeah, Shabazian, I think I heard he did move camps. I'm not completely sure if it is AKA, but if he did, yeah, good for him. That's a really big move. But we do see that this fight is lined very closely. We see that Imavov opened up plus 130 dog. He's now minus 121 favorite. We see that Shabazian opened up minus 150 favorite. He's now plus 101. In terms of the fight goes or fight doesn't go, I'd probably lean fight doesn't go depending on the line. But yeah, I like Imavov here. I'm going to keep waiting to see where this line goes because it looks like some money is coming in on the Shabazian side as a dog. Looks like a lot of people are touching the dog here in Shabazian. So I could see this line potentially flip later in the week. So I'm gonna wait it out, see where the line does move. But my lean is going to be Imavov, and Imavov probably like a second or third round knockout.
This is such a good fight. These are two very young prospects. Shabazian 5-2, Imavov 2-1. Each of these guys have a signature win. Ian Heinisch is the signature win for Imavov. And Brad Tavares, man, what a win for Shabazian, knocking that dude out. He knocked out Brad Tavares, and then you got a 22-year-old fighting Derek Brunson, the Sanford version of Derek Brunson. And then Jack Hermanson, that's a guy you don't want to grapple with. But he won 5 rounds. This kid's already got 5-round experience. I see why people are on Shabazian here. Big time level of competition difference here. And I don't see Imavov being well-rounded enough to exploit Edmen's biggest hole. So this just looks like, to me, like it's going to be a banger on the feet that's going to be super fun to watch.
Yep, for sure. Somebody in the chat did confirm that it's AKA. I do see a picture of him with Islam Makhachev, Tagir Ulanbekov, and some other guys as well. So
that's a step in the right direction. Just another reason to like him there. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it could be. I see what people are betting on, man. It's going to be a very close fight. No really strong lean one way or another, but I'm going to go with Imavov for the cardio. But would it shock me if, Shabazian put on a great performance? Not at all. Not at all. Like the level of competition, I think, is huge as well to mention. But let us move on to the next fight. Let's keep this thing rolling. We have Al Iaquinta going against Bobby Green. We have Al Iaquinta, who is 34 years old, 5'10", with a 70-inch reach. Bobby Green, 35 years old, 5'10", with a 71-inch reach. We have not seen Al Iaquinta in literally, I think it's like 2 years. It's been a while. His last fight, he lost a decision against Dan Hooker. Prior to that, lost a decision against Donald Cerrone. That was actually the last fight where Donald Cerrone won. And that was a long time ago. Now Donald Cerrone has not won a fight in like 6 or 7 fights. And prior to that, he did beat Kevin Lee in a decision. Prior to that, he lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov by decision, and then knocked out Diego Sanchez. He is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. I will say he is fighting some really good competition. Bobby Green is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. A decision win over Clay Guida, a decision win over Lando Venata, a decision win over Alan Patrick, a decision loss to Thiago Moises. And, I really thought he won that fight. And then a decision loss to Rafael Fiziev, a lot closer than a lot of people thought that would have been a fight where Bobby Green actually won the 3rd round. So, this is a very interesting fight. Again, we have not seen Al Iaquinta. Bobby Green has been very, very active as of late. What do you like in here for this one, Weezy?
Yeah, well, this fight's, at Madison Square Garden. So, there, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, Vellante, hometown guy, Iaquinta, hometown guy, so Iaquinta, another Serra Longo guy. I don't know if he's still training there, but it's been so long since he's fought. So if he did change camps, I don't know about it yet. But Bobby Green actually more experienced here. 40 fights to Iaquinta's 21, twice as much time in the pro cage. Both of these guys have been pros for over 12 years. While Bobby Green, 16 UFC fights, Iaquinta, 14. So we got Green with, an experience advantage here, a 1-inch reach advantage. Neither one of these guys great finishers, and both of these guys pretty durable, as we see that Bobby Green's been finished in 4 of his 12 losses, and Iaquinta in 3 of his 6 losses. So 7 out of 18 losses have finished inside the distance. This fight probably sees the scorecards. Iaquinta absorbs more than he lands. He lands 4.06 and absorbs 4.44. 40% striking accuracy, almost a 1% knockdown per total significant strikes landed, and a 62% striking defense for Iaquinta. And he's been knocked down, it looks like 3 times in 835 significant strikes absorbed. And it looks like it's the same for Green, about 3 times or maybe 4 times in 788, but no, it's 3. So, yeah, both of these guys' striking numbers very similar. It's just Green who's more accurate and throws a little more volume and has the much better significant strike ratio and differential. If we talk about grappling here, Iaquinta only 8 takedowns in 14 fights, and he's only getting about 6% control time. So Iaquinta, not a great wrestler. 80% of his fights take place on the feet. And for Bobby Green, it's about 74% of his fights that take place on the feet. Green will mix in that wrestling and do it successfully when he does choose to go to it. 20 of 48 on his takedown attempts, almost 42% accurate, over 1.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. And he's out-controlling his opponents 16% to 10%. While Iaquinta is getting out-controlled at almost, or a little bit better than a 2-to-1 ratio, 6% control time for, 14% control time against. So maybe Bobby Green can mix in his wrestling here and win some minutes there. Also on the feet, Bobby Green, really good defense. Well, both of these guys are good defensively, but Bobby Green's just really hard to deal with standing up. He keeps his hands down. He's got great head movement and great footwork, and he strikes from odd angles. My early leans for this fight, well, here, let's talk about strength of schedule first, as we see that this is very close. Iaquinta fighting the more experienced competition, Green fighting the slightly better win-loss competition. When we look at the wins, it's a little bit better for Iaquinta. And when we look at the losses, very similar. The strength schedule numbers, similar. The striking numbers, just on paper, I'm giving Green an advantage. The grappling numbers, I'm definitely giving Green an advantage. Green's more experienced. Green's the better finisher. And Green's 1 year older, but he's got a 1-inch reach advantage. So just on paper here, I do see some advantages for Green. We add in the fact that probably Green has had 3 or 4 fights since the last time Iaquinta even stood in the cage. You got to like Bobby Green here, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like I like Green quite a lot. The only problem with Green is he messes around a lot in his fights. He showboats a lot, and the judges really don't seem to like him for some reason. Like there's some fights that I really thought he should have won. Like I thought he should have won the Thiago Moises fight. I thought he, clearly won the Drakkar close fight. I thought he even won the Trinaldo fight. I mean, those are all close fights, but I still scored him for him. Even in like the Fiziev fight, like I thought Fiziev clearly won, but it's just crazy to look at the numbers in this one. I know numbers don't mean everything, but it's so impressive to see that he outstruck Fiziev 143 to 104. Like that's very impressive to me, outlanding him in every single round. Of course, Fiziev was landing the harder strikes. That's why he won the fight. But Green outlanded him 32 to 25 in the first, 45 to 36 in the second, and Green outlanded him 66 to 43 in the third round. He threw 121 strikes in the third round. That's crazy. Like Bobby Green striking is really good. And I guess Iaquinta, I haven't seen him fight in a while, but he kind of just left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, losing to Donald Cerrone, like I said, this was the last time we saw Donald Cerrone look good. And he looked really good against Iaquinta, dropping him 2 times in that fight. Iaquinta is very tough. He was able to survive to a decision, but still, he did not look great in that fight. And then just looked completely lost against Dan Hooker. Now it's a 2-year layoff. People in the chat are talking about that. He was, he was potentially going to retire at one point during the pandemic and all that. I don't know where his head's at. He's not been active. Bobby Green has been active. I like Bobby Green here quite a bit, and I actually went to bet on Bobby Green last night, and the line moved in a big way. I want to see what the line was, but I went to bet on Bobby Green. I remember seeing him at like minus 140 something, and then I look at the line. He went from minus 146 to minus 168, and to be honest, like I don't know if I want to lay that price tag because again, we see that Bobby Green goes to a lot of close fights, and this very well could be one of those. And again, the judges hate him, but I think this is a pretty good spot for Bobby Green. But I'm going to attack this fight in a different way. Rather than laying the money line on Bobby Green, which is now minus 170, and I do expect to get wider, I'm going to be looking at Bobby Green by decision, and I'm going to be looking at the over 2.5 and fight goes to decision. Iaquinta is very, very tough. Bobby Green, I think it's like the last 13 of his 14 fights have all been to decision. So I think there's a very good chance that this does go to decision. I don't really see either guy getting finished here. Yeah, Bobby Green, decision against Fiziev, decision against Moises, decision against Patrick, Venata decision, Guida decision, Trinaldo decision, close decision, Venata decision again, Magomedov decision. His last knockout win or knockout loss was against Dustin Poirier. So other than that, it's just a bunch of decisions. So, yeah, I think this goes to decision. That's probably how I'm going to be attacking it. No line out on that yet, but I'm looking at the over 2.5 decision and then Bobby Green by decision as well. But I think the decision, fight goes decision, probably does cover both sides. and I'm hoping to get it at a semi-decent price here. Any thoughts on fight goes, doesn't go? Any thoughts on the money line?
Yeah, if Bobby Green's great for fight goes to decision bets, man. I mean, that's a money train, but they're juiced and everybody knows it. I mean, when I bet Bobby Green to win in the third round against Fisayev, I got 36-1 odds. You know, that's how confident the books are that Bobby Green's not finishing anybody. And he even had a good third round. I mean, like, he was landing some big shots, and Fisayev was gassed. I was like, man, if I hit this bet, it's going to be awesome. But obviously, you know, that was just sometimes you get pulled in by really too good odds, but it feels like it's going to be dead money anyway. So yeah, I would, whoever I liked here, be on them to win by decision to get, but you know, even if Green's minus 170 on the money line, you probably won't get much better than minus 125, 130 on the decision bet, but I'd still do it.
Yep, I agree there. So it's going to be looking out for some props on that one. I just don't know if I'd like to lay chalk on one Bobby Green. Just doesn't typically seem to work out. A lot of his fights are really close. This one probably is semi-close as well, but I think it's a good spot for him. But let us move on to the next fight, and here we go. We have Alex Pereira going against Andreas Michailidis. We have a fellow Greek, Uncle Weezy. Pereira, he is 34 years old, 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. Michailidis, 33 years old, 6 foot with a 76-inch reach. Alex Pereira is huge. Kind of a 4-inch height advantage and also a 4-inch reach advantage as well. We see that Alex Pereira is going to be making his debut. He is 3-1 in his last 4 fights. This is a guy that's not active in terms of MMA. He's had like 4 MMA fights since like 2016. Against, not great competition, but he is going out there and doing what he should be and knocking them out early. Did have a submission loss in his very first MMA fight where he got taken down pretty easily and submitted shortly after. As far as Andreas Michailidis, he has 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He had his UFC debut against Modestas Bukauskas in a really weird fight where he went for a takedown, kind of got elbowed a ton to the head, and he was still there. He wasn't knocked out, but he kind of fell out of the cage when they opened the door, and the ref just waved it off for some reason. But regardless, it was a knockout loss at the end of the first there. And then as far as in his next fight, he won a decision against KB Bueller, who has since then been cut, I believe. And he looked good early on. It kind of slowed down as the fight went on. And then Bueller, I believe, actually won the third round, outstruck him quite a bit. So, yep, interesting fight. A lot to hype on Pereira as well. This guy seems to be the real deal, but this is an MMA fight, not a kickboxing fight. We'll see what happens, but I really like what I see in terms of the striking. But I think I do have some question marks about his grappling. How about you, Uncle Weezy?
Yeah, so I've never really even seen Alex Pereira fight. So, I mean, but here's what we know about him. This guy knocked out Israel Adesanya. He's a decorated kickboxer. Not the greatest record as a kickboxer, but the guy is obviously at the highest level of that sport. But only 4 MMA fights, while Michailidis has 17. Michailidis, absolutely the more well-rounded mixed martial artist here. He's a decent kickboxer in his own right. He carries some power. Michailidis finished 11 of his 13 wins inside the distance, 7 of them by knockout, 4 of them by submission. So, and then we see Pereira, all 3 of his wins inside the distance by knockout, and all 4 of Michailidis' losses inside the distance by knockout. So there's absolutely a path here for Alex Pereira, if this fight stays standing, to knock out Andreas Michailidis. That being said, Michailidis is not going to be completely outclassed on the feet. He's a good kickboxer in his own right, but it's going to be Pereira with the advantage there. The question is, can Andreas get this fight to the ground, work some ground and pound, work some submissions? He's absolutely able to do that. Pereira's first MMA fight was against somebody named Quemuel Otani, and he got subbed in that one. So, but then again, Michailidis, not known for his gas tank. Wrestling is extremely exhausting. And when he went for a takedown against Bukauskas, it cost him the fight. That was how we wound up losing, because Bukauskas landed some Travis Brown-style elbows that wound up knocking him out. So, I don't have much on this fight. This is striker versus average striker with a decent grappling game. So I think I'll just go with the striker because I would have to guess that Michailidis is going to look a lot better in the grappling exchanges than I've seen him look in the past. But we do know Pereira has a hole there. It's probably going to be a stay away from me, but you got to believe with this guy having a win over Israel Adesanya that they're looking to get him a debut fight that he can handle. And I don't like to talk bad about my fellow Greeks, but Michailidis might be one of the easier, middleweight fights in the UFC.
Yep, he could be. I was very tempted to pick Michailidis, but after getting into it, I mean, his gas tank is very, very bad. But what I will say, I'm actually really impressed with his striking. He's very dangerous, does finish the majority of his wins, but he's not going to want to strike with Alex Pereira. Like, he's got to know, like, he needs to get this fight down to the mat. And he showed that he could. I mean, against KB Bueller, Jack Attack mentioned in the chat, he was able to take down Bueller in the first round, control him for a little bit. And just taking a look, like outside of the UFC, I was looking to see how much this guy does wrestle. And to be honest, it's not a lot, but he has a black belt in BJJ for what it's worth. And you take a look at Alex Pereira in the 4 fights that we can watch, he's getting taken down a lot more than you'd like to see, especially when you see the price tag on him. Got taken down, obviously, in his first MMA fight, submitted back in, I think it was 2016. And I think he was even taken down in his next fight against Marcelo Cruz. And then he knocked out his next 2 opponents. So we have seen him taken down. The ground game is definitely a huge question. I'm sure he's made improvements since then, but still, if Michailidis can take him down, he could potentially have success, having a black belt and all that. But I don't think Michailidis has the cardio to keep up a wrestling heavy pace at all, because he's somebody that kind of slows down, like even in a striking fight. So just for the cardio concerns of the Michailidis side, I'm going to slightly lean Pereira. But Michailidis is live. I think Michailidis, if he does go for takedowns early, an early submission would not completely shock me. So, but either way, this is a huge stay away from me. I think Pereira probably does knock him out. You mentioned Michailidis has 4 knockout losses. His chin's not good. His cardio is not good. Even like his wrestling's not good, I don't think, enough to get him down consistently. So this is going to be Pereira for me by knockout. But I think an interesting spot is going to be the under 2.5 rounds. I don't know if they're going to set it at 1.5 or 2.5. I'm guessing probably 1.5. But like the fight doesn't go to decision. It was going to be something I was looking at. Like you mentioned, both guys have never lost a decision. I think if Michailidis wins, it's probably like a TKO or a submission early. And I think if Pereira wins, it's probably an early knockout. To be honest, I'd really be shocked if this went into the second round. So I'll take Pereira, though. Give me Pereira by a first-round knockout. The guy's a beast. The guy is an absolute beast. But Michailidis could make this an MMA fight and take him down. So we'll see. But I do like Michailidis to get the win. We see Pereira to get the win. We do see that Michailidis opened up as a plus 130 dog. So that's interesting. And he's now plus 205. So lots of money's come in on Pereira early. Pereira opening up minus 150. He's now minus 240. I kind of expect that line to get wider and wider. People are going to be talking about him knocking out Adesanya all week. Yeah. Lots of hype going to be on him. So I get that, but I don't feel comfortable at all with the minus 240 price tag. To be honest, I wouldn't even feel comfortable with like the minus 150 price tag at opened at, but I will pick him to win. I'll pick him to win by knockout.
Yeah, the way that I would attack this fight is, we got 5 combined losses, all of them inside the distance. That screams fight doesn't go to decision. But then you look, Michailidis 17 fights, Pereira 4. So we add up the finishes and just wins and losses. 19 out of 21. That's over 90%. If I'm getting this fight doesn't go anything better than minus 250, I'm jumping on it at a quite a bit. Let's say maybe 3 to 4, maybe even 5 units, because there's a path for both of them here. And Michailidis doesn't have the greatest conditioning, so I don't see this one seeing the scorecards.
Yep, agree 100%. Melon bringing up a point. Alex is training with the champ Glover. His grappling will be improving a lot, but what I'll say to that is Zhang was training at Tiger Muay Thai for the past 3 years, and he looked like shit last night. That's what I got to say to that, Melon. So yeah, yeah. So
and let me just interrupt. Yeah, it's wrestling. You can go train wrestling for 6 months. They put you in there with a wrestler, you're getting murdered in the wrestling. Plain and simple. You don't get better at wrestling in a very short period of time.
Yeah, get Zhang out of the UFC. I don't want to see him anymore. But we'll move on to the next fight. And we have a very good one. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one, Weezy. I don't think we've talked about it much. Frankie Edgar, Marlon Vera. Frankie Edgar is 40 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. Marlon Vera, 28 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. Yeah, Marlon Vera is going to be younger. I think this is probably the biggest factor for me is going to be the age here. Frankie Edgar, 40 years old at bantamweight, has not looked good in the past couple fights. I'm getting knocked out more frequently, I should say. Marlon Vera, 12 years younger. Marlon Vera also bigger, a 2-inch height advantage and also a 2-inch reach advantage. We take a look at the last few fights. Frankie Edgar, a decision win over Cub Swanson, a decision loss to Max Holloway, a knockout loss to the Korean Zombie, a decision win against Pedro Munoz. I really thought Munoz won that one, and a knockout loss against Corey Sandhagen, one of the best knockouts you'll see of the year. As far as Marlon Vera, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win over Andre Ewell, a decision loss to Song Yadong. Really close fight. I think he could have scored it for him. Sean O'Malley knockout, Jose Aldo decision loss, and then a Davey Grant decision win. This is a very interesting fight because I think if this fight was, say maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, I'd probably be on Frankie Edgar here all day, especially at this price tag. But, he's now 40 years old. I think the durability is diminishing a little bit. Marlon Vera, he's in his prime. He's very, very dangerous. I think Edgar could present some problems to Vera. I mean, we've seen Vera taken down. His takedown defense is improving. His ground game is very good. He's just very dangerous anywhere the fight goes. But Frankie Edgar's probably going to have a speed advantage here. But I just see Marlon Vera probably catching him at some point. The 40-year-old age definitely is probably my biggest concern of the fight. But really curious to hear your thoughts on this one, Weezy.
Yeah, man. So that's just a huge thing. We're talking about bantamweights here, and you got one that's 40 and one that's 28. So the only thing that would get me off the 28-year-old is if the 40-year-old had just had a huge advantage someplace or had a massive experience advantage here. And the problem is Marlon Vera's got 25 pro fights, and 17 of them have been at the UFC level. So this guy's fought 2/3 of his career at the UFC level. He's got 17 UFC fights. So, there gets a point in the experience numbers where, the experience is good. It's going up. But then eventually you get to the point where you're a mixed martial artist. Your body just starts to break down at certain ages. And it's, he's not way more experienced here. He's really only got 9 more professional fights than Marlon Vera. He's got 230 more minutes in the cage and this is about 280 more minutes in the UFC cage does Frankie Edgar compared to Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera is a finisher, 82% finish rate in his career, while Frankie Edgar not, only a 46% finish rate. Marlon Vera's never been finished in 7 losses. Frankie Edgar's only been finished in 3 out of 9 losses. So that's interesting here because, Marlon Vera is such a great finisher, but he's also so durable. And Frankie Edgar's, not a guy that gets submitted ever. And he's been knocked out, but, it was that freak knee, to Corey. And then before that, it was the Korean Zombie. So if we look at the striking numbers here, in a 28 fight sample size, Frankie Edgar's landing 1 more significant strike per minute than he absorbs. That's very impressive. While Marlon Vera actually does absorb more strikes per minute than he lands. We got Vera more accurate at 51% compared to about 40% for Edgar here. And Edgar way better defensively, almost 67% striking defense, while Vera is much more hittable at 52%. Edgar mixes in his wrestling. He's got 70 career UFC takedowns. He's shot for 223 takedowns in 28 fights. So this is a guy that we can count on to use his wrestling when he thinks he's got an advantage. Marlon Vera, he's getting his takedowns at a 42% clip. But it's Edgar who's out-controlling his opponents 22% to 3%, while it's Vera being out-controlled 15% to 25%. Both of these guys' takedown defense is above 65%. Neither one of these guys is being taken down a lot, but it's obviously Edgar that uses his wrestling to win minutes a lot better than Marlon Vera does. And also, Frankie Edgar winning a lot of minutes in the striking exchanges. Frankie Edgar has fought the tougher level of competition. But Frankie Edgar is 12 years older than Marlon Vera and not that much more experienced. I just don't know how dangerous Frankie Edgar is at this point in his career. And Marlon Vera's always dangerous. He's never not dangerous because it doesn't matter how much you're beating this guy, you're never finishing him. He's never been finished. In 25 fights, Marlon Vera's never been finished. And Frankie Edgar, you got to really land clean on him to get him out of there. So this is going to be a war, dude. This is going to be a war. We're going to find out how much Frankie has left in the tank because Marlon Vera brings it every damn time, and he is a very tough out. Even though as a stats guy, I see the experience advantage, I see the striking advantage, I see the grappling advantage, I see the strength of schedule advantage. I can't count that the 40-year-old Frankie Edgar is going to be better than the 28-year-old Marlon Vera. Marlon's got to be hungrier. Marlon's bigger. Marlon's the better submission grappler here. And he's just going to outvolume him as well, I think, in this particular fight. Marlon Vera, though, is a slow starter, and that could be a problem here. I think this fight might go to decision.
If it goes to decision, I'm really worried for Marlon Vera. I mean, we brought up a ton of advantages for Frankie Edgar. Like everything on paper for Frankie Edgar is an advantage, but the one big thing, like you mentioned, is the age. So if it does go to decision, I'm actually pretty worried. I think Edgar could win some minutes of this fight, potentially mixing takedowns here or there. I think the striking competitive for sure. For sure, it's competitive. I just think that Marlon Vera is the more dangerous fighter. If there is a finish, we know it's coming from Vera. Nobody's finishing Marlon Vera there, but yeah, you're right. Frankie Edgar, somebody that was really, known for his durability. He hadn't been finished in a while up until the Ortega fight. Ortega finished him by strikes. And then the Korean Zombie finished him by strikes. And then also Corey Sandhagen by strikes as well. So the guys are getting knocked out by Sandhagen, Korean Zombie, and Ortega, all three guys that would beat Vera pretty handily, in my opinion. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I said, if Edgar was not 40 years old, like I'd be picking him here. I'd be betting him as a dog. It's just the problem is he's 40 years old. He's a bantamweight. Like that does not seem to really work out all that well. So I'm going to go with Marlon Vera. I will take him to win inside the distance. So a bet that I will be looking at placing rather than laying like the minus 164 on Marlon Vera there. He opened up at minus 200, currently minus 164. So Edgar opened up plus 170, is currently plus 144. So I'm curious to see where the line does go throughout the week. But yeah, I'd rather just play Vera inside the distance because if it does go to decision, I think it's going to be a very, very greasy decision that really can go either way. But I'm kind of counting on how dangerous Vera is to get a finish at some point. So I'm going to take Marlon Vera, though, but not with a ton of confidence, especially after looking into it, because Frankie Edgar does seem somewhat live here.
Yeah, I mean, the wrestling is there. The boxing is there. The fight IQ is there. The experience is there. There's a lot of reasons to like Frankie Edgar here, but 40-year-old bantamweights, man, I just can't. And Marlon Vera is just so dangerous. So yeah, I can't get behind Edgar here. But at the same time, if I were to bet Edgar, I would go by decision because nobody's ever finishing Marlon Vera. So yeah, that would be the only way to get a little more value out of Edgar if you like that. And what's the line on this one?
It is around minus 164 for Vera, plus 144 for Edgar.
That feels like right about where it should be. I feel like I should be getting pretty good plus money to bet on a 40-year-old bantamweight. I don't care if he's more experienced.
Yeah, for sure. Something that somebody in the chat brought up, I think it's a good live betting opportunity because we know for a fact pretty much that Marlon Vera is probably going to drop the first round. He drops the first round in so many fights. So yeah, maybe live bet Marlon Vera after the first round. Kind of, did that with Laron Murphy last fight. So yep, I think Marlon Vera loses the first, could win the next two. I think that could be a scenario, or just finish Edgar at some point. But yeah, very tough fight to call. I'm going to be staying away from this one for the most part, unless I do see a line I like in terms of like the fight, or Vera inside the distance, or Edgar by decision. If Edgar by decision is like a decent price, like it could be worth a shot, right?
Yeah. If you're getting like plus 300 or something, I bet Edgar by decision against Sandhagen. I got like plus 550. I was bragging about that ticket until he got starched in the first 30 seconds. But it was the same reasoning there. It was that, all right, this Sandhagen kid's really good, but hey, Edgar's good everywhere. And if he mixes in the wrestling combined with Sandhagen's really bad takedown defense at the time of that fight, yeah, he could win minutes. But the thing is, Sandhagen, he doesn't come out lazy and drop first rounds regularly. But the last thing that I'll leave you with here is what I will be looking at here is Marlon Vera round 3. Ooh. This guy is just hell unleashed, and the first round is slow, but then he starts digging in the second, and in the third, he's just a nightmare to deal with. Do you remember what a bloodbath the third round of that Grant fight was when Vera was working him, dude? And if Grant didn't have next level toughness, that fight would have finished.
Yep, I do remember. I had the Vera inside the distance.
Yep, we both did.
200, and he literally, I don't know how he got out of that submission. It was so deep.
Oh God, that was a bad beat, dude. That was one where you're like, I'll make that bet again and again and again. He was this close. It was like Duraev yesterday, or Zaleski dos Santos. If that prick Vyacheslav Kisiev didn't ruin our night.
Yeah, better not see him in the cage ever again.
Ever again.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll move on. I don't think we'll have to worry about Kisiev in Madison Square Garden. You wouldn't think. And I don't think he'll probably be reffing fights for a while. I hope so. I hope not, at least. But we'll move on. And so I believe that was the first fight on the main card, right? Edgar Vera?
It depends if there's 5 or 6 on the main card, but it should only be 5 because this is an actual pay-per-view. People will be paying for this one. So yeah, that should be the curtain jerker for the pay-per-view, man. Edgar Vera, what a start. And then it just gets better.
It gets better and better. This main card is phenomenal. So yeah, great card, great fight to kick off the main card here. And then we have this fight. I mean, this fight, I feel like it's going to be fight of the night. Like, this fight I'm looking forward to so much. We have Shane Burgos, 30 years old, 5'11", 75-inch reach. Billy Quarantillo, 32 years old, 5'10", with a 70-inch reach. So Billy Quarantillo is going to be 2 years older. He's going to have a 1-inch height disadvantage and a 5-inch reach disadvantage, which I think is pretty important to note there. So as far as the last couple fights, Burgos is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Had a submission win over Kurt Holloway, a decision win over Cub Swanson, a knockout win over Makwan Amarakani, a decision against Josh Emmett, and one of the best fights I've ever seen. Went back and watched that today. Just the amount of damage Burgos is able to take is just something crazy. Like, not a lot of guys can eat, flush shots from Josh Emmett, and this guy ate like over 100 of them. He got knocked down twice, but Emmett was still not able to get him out of there. And then against Edson Barbosa, a very brutal knockout loss, something like I've never seen before, where he got hit hard, and then it took like his brain like a couple seconds to register, and he just goes down, which was very, very scary. And not to mention, he's coming back 5 months later, which in my opinion, I don't think that's long enough. That knockout loss was very, very terrifying. But, he's back, and I'm ready to watch this fight against Billy Quarantillo, he's a very exciting guy in his own right. He has 4-1 in his last 5 fights, a submission win over Jacob Kilburn, a decision win over Spike Carlisle, a knockout win over Kyle Nelson. I think all 3 of those guys aren't in the UFC anymore, if I'm not mistaken. And then a decision loss against Gavin Tucker, and then a knockout win against Gabriel Benitez. So as you can see, Burgos is fighting the much better competition. This is going to be one of those fights where, they're just going to stand in the middle and throw a ton. Both guys have defensive liabilities. Both guys are very hittable, and both guys have next level toughness. I think Billy Quarantillo, it'd be smart to try to get this down to the mat, but Burgos has really good takedown defense. So this is going to be a really fun fight. It's going to be an absolute war, and I think this is my prediction for fight of the night, Weezy.
It's going to be such a good fight, man. Quarantillo, a little more experience, about 40 more minutes of cage time, 3 more pro fights, 5 more months as a pro than Burgos. But it's Burgos who's fought more than half of his career at the UFC level, while for Quarantillo, it's less than a third of his career at the UFC level. Quarantillo finishing fights at a 75% clip, 12 of 16. KO 44%, sub 31%. And then Burgos is actually an equal opportunity finisher, which I find strange because I don't think of who the hell is Shane Burgos subbed? Oh, wow, he got Kurt Holloway. You just think of this guy as a boxer. You think of him as a striker, But yeah, Burgos an equal opportunity finisher here. Finishing, I think it's probably 5 by knockout and 5 by sub. And he's been knocked out in 2 of his 3 losses, while Billy Quarantillo has been knocked out in 1 of his 3 losses. So 3 out of these guys' 6 combined losses have come inside the distance. If we look at the striking numbers, Burgos with crazy volume here, landing 7.29, absorbing 6.11, 40, almost 50% accurate, landing a knockdown on 0.75% of the significant strikes that he lands, 0.81 knockdowns per 15 minutes. Quarantillo, just fantastic striking ratios and differences here, as he lands 7.08 per minute and only absorbs 4.33 per minute. Quarantillo very accurate at 64%, but he's not good defensively at 43% striking defense. So while Quarantillo is way more accurate with his striking, it's Burgos who's actually much better defensively, as Burgos has a 59% striking defense. But here's the difference, is that Burgos is spending about 85% of his UFC career at striking distance, while for Quarantillo, it's about 44% at striking at distance. So it seems like Quarantillo, his fights have just spent a lot more time in control time positions, which is probably why we see him outstriking his opponents by such an impressive ratio. It's probably because of ground and pound and control time rather than just really good distance striking acumen. But we look at the strength of schedule numbers here. It's Burgos all day, much better overall, much better wins, and much better losses. So it's going to be Burgos with a 5-inch reach advantage here. It's going to be Burgos with a strength of schedule advantage here. It's going to be Burgos with a distance striking advantage here. And then it's going to be Quarantillo with his wrestling and the ability to be able to out-control his opponents, maybe make the fight a little bit greasy, that kind of gives him the edge. But when I look at the numbers here, it looks like Billy Quarantillo is going to have to accrue a ton of control time against Shane Burgos here to make him uncomfortable, to take Shane out of where he's the most comfortable and where he does the most damage. The problem is, we look at that one stat down there in the middle of the page. Shane Burgos in 9 fights has had 56 takedowns shot against him. This guy is used to seeing more than 6 takedown attempts per fight, and he's showing 89.29% takedown defense. He's been controlled about 11 minutes on those 6 takedowns. This guy is very difficult to take down and control. If you can't do that, that means you're standing with him. He's out-voluming Quarantillo. He's out-powering Quarantillo. And he's much better defensively on the feet than Quarantillo is. I got to go with Shane Burgos here.
Yep, and I actually am really concerned for Billy Quarantillo in this fight, man. I mean, he is so hittable that it's very concerning. I mean, Burgos, his striking's phenomenal. I think he's going to definitely have the striking advantage in this fight. Very good leg kicks as well that I think he can implement here. And he throws with a ton of power. Not only does he throw a ton of volume, he attempts 14 strikes per minute, but he throws and lands with a ton of power. Billy Quarantillo, the only time we really saw him, face much resistance was against Gavin Tucker. And outside of that, he's rolling through guys like Kamela Kirk, who gassed out after the first round. He's rolling through guys like Jacob Kilburn, Spike Carlisle, Kyle Nelson, guys that have been cut since then. But yeah, against Gavin Tucker was actually the one that took Billy Quarantillo down 7 times. Billy Quarantillo, I think, went like 0 for 3 on takedowns in that fight. And I don't think his wrestling's that great, especially not great enough to get Burgos down. So if this does stay standing, like I kind of think it does, I think this is going to be bad, like really bad for Billy Quarantillo. But what I will say about Burgos is, like I said earlier, like he's coming off of a brutal knockout that is scary. Like he's coming back way too soon. Like that was bad. And before that, he took a beating against Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett like hit this guy clean several times. Josh Emmett, one of the hardest hitters in the division, landed 127 significant strikes on him, put him down twice. So Burgos, like on paper, like his striking defense is solid, but this guy is way too hittable. He absorbs way too much for my liking. But I don't think that Billy Quarantillo, has the same amount of power as a Josh Emmett, as a Barbosa. I like Burgos here. You take a look at the line; it is pretty wide. Kind of expected it to be a little bit closer because a lot of people are really high on Quarantillo. Definitely a fan favorite. People really do like him, but I think people are seeing that this fight is probably going to stay standing. And at that point, you absolutely have to favor Shane Burgos. If Billy Quarantillo cannot get it down to the mat, I just don't see him winning. Unless like Burgos is very compromised still from his knockout loss in that Emmett fight. He's taken a lot of damage. Unless he's compromised from that, I just really find it hard to see Billy Quarantillo, winning this fight because, Billy Quarantillo, his best advantage, I'd say, in fights is that cardio. His cardio is top notch, and I don't really see that as a problem of Shane Burgos. So I like Burgos here. Opened up -170. He's currently -205. Billy Quarantillo opened up +145, currently +175. So money coming in on Burgos. I agree with it. Don't know if I'll be getting there from a betting standpoint. I don't know if this goes to decision. I don't know if it finishes. Both guys have next level toughness, but at the same time, both guys have their defensive liabilities. So, yeah, I don't know if it finishes or not. Any lean one way or another. I'm kind of leaning Burgos by decision, but a knockout definitely would not shock me with how hittable Quarantillo is.
These guys are both volume monsters, and they tend to break their opponents. So neither one of these guys is what I would call, easy to finish. 50% finish rate in their losses. So that's like it's right on the. I don't think I would have to see this significantly one way or the other from -115 in each direction in order for me to be even remotely interested in going either way, because I could see it going under. I could see it going the distance. Quarantillo, his striking looked like it took the next step against Benitez. I wasn't expecting that kind of a result against Benitez, as good of a kickboxer as Benitez is. But that was a very impressive last fight for Billy Quarantillo. And we know that Burgos has taken a lot of damage in these last couple fights, but he's the kind of fighter that can wear it pretty well. So the time props I'm not touching right here, but I do like this fight for Burgos.
Sounds good to me. So we will move on. We have 3 fights left, about 200 of you in here. If y'all can please smash that like button. Also subscribe to here at Pub Sports Radio. We go live every Sunday. We'll be live on Tuesday, 7:00 p.m. Eastern time, doing the DraftKings show as well. Should be a fun time there as always. So we'll move on to the next fight. And this is probably one of my favorite fights on the card. Justin Gaethje going against Michael Chandler. Justin Gaethje is 32 years old, 5'11", 70-inch reach. Michael Chandler, 35 years old, 5'8", with a 71-inch reach. Justin Gaethje is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win over James Vick, a knockout win over Edson Barbosa, a knockout win over Donald Cerrone, and a knockout win over Tony Ferguson, and a submission loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov. And of course, all you see there is finishes. I think Justin Gaethje has not been to decision. I want to say on like 11 fights. Like, it's been a while since Justin Gaethje has seen the scorecards. I think he's been there. He's never been there in the UFC. Never been to a decision in the UFC. It's been a while. So as far as Michael Chandler, you see a ton of finishes there as well. 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Had a UFC debut against Dan Hooker, won by knockout, and then lost by knockout to the champ Charles Oliveira. So yeah, this is a fight that just screams violence. Both guys are extremely dangerous. Both guys are hittable, especially Gaethje. Chandler, his chin's not there. Durability edge I do give to Gaethje. Chandler, I don't give him much durability. I'd always been knocked out several times. But yeah, I think it's going to be one of those fights where they just come forward, stand and bang until one man falls. Both guys are going to want to pressure. Who's going to be first to take the back step? I don't know, but it's going to be a fun fight, and I think someone's going down. I'm kind of leaning Michael Chandler early, or Justin Gaethje like mid-second round later in the fight. I think if Chandler does win, I think it's round 1. If he does not get Gaethje out of there, I think Gaethje does take over eventually and break Chandler and finish him. So yeah, great fight regardless. I think it's a great violent spot as well. Weezy, what are you looking at for this one?
Yeah, who wouldn't want to watch this fight? This is going to be so awesome. The experience numbers are very similar for these guys. They've both been champions in other organizations. They're both they're both been at the top level for a very long time. Gaethje, a 91% finish rate. Chandler, a 77% finish rate. Gaethje been finished in all of his losses. Chandler been finished in 4 out of his 6 losses. 7 of these guys' 9 losses have come inside the distance. Another thing that makes us scream violence. Gaethje just bringing chaos. This dude absorbs 8 significant strikes a minute, and he's winning more fights than he loses. The Chandler numbers, there's not much there. There's not much meat on the bone. Only 2 fights. He's landing 6, absorbing 4, showing 37% striking defense. That's not a good, recipe. against Gaethje, but then again, he fought Hooker and Oliveira. You know, they were not long fights, so I don't think we can read too much into these numbers, you know, especially on the Chandler side. What we do know is that Gaethje has attempted 1 takedown in 8 fights, so we know that this guy would prefer to stand. We know that 94% of Justin Gaethje's fights have been taking place at striking range, and that's from a guy who fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. So if outside of the Nurmagomedov fight, I think we might have seen this guy maybe controlled for 1 or 2 seconds of his UFC career, if that. Everybody has kind of given Gaethje the kind of fight that he wants, which is he wants to stand and bang. And I don't know if we're going to see the return of wrestling Michael Chandler here, because look, Chandler's 28 fights into his career. He's 35 years old. He wants this win, right? Don't go into a war with Justin Gaethje. Even if you win, you're going to the hospital. You know, why not just wrestle this dude? His takedown defense is not good, and his ground game is garbage. It's flat garbage. There's a reason why a guy who wrestled, you know, for his entire career before he became a mixed martial artist doesn't ever go to his wrestling. It's because his submission game is lacking. And Michael Chandler, if he wants to maybe fight a few more times in his career, would be very, very, very smart to use that wrestling background of his in order to win minutes and bank rounds that way. Because standing up with Justin Gaethje is going to be hell. He's going to destroy your legs. He's going to destroy your body. He's going to punt your head into the 3rd row. Both these guys hit like trucks. But I just wouldn't want to box with Justin Gaethje. Why do that? It makes no sense. So, you know, this is an interesting fight. If we knew how much Chandler was planning to wrestle here, I think I'd have a much better read on this fight. But if it stays standing, I'm with Gaethje.
Yeah, the problem is if he does wrestle, does he have the gas tank to do it, right? Like that's my big thing. Like maybe Chandler first round submission could be a thing, but I don't know if he has the gas tank to wrestle consistently for the duration of the fight is my problem.
But you know, you're talking about guys that have been in 5-round fights, both of them. You know, Chandler as a champion in Bellator, so this guy's used to 5-round fights where he does have to wrestle. So, but we just haven't seen it in the UFC yet. And of course, you're not going to wrestle Charles Oliveira, and he knocked out Hooker quick, so there was no need to see it there. I mean, he hasn't even shot a takedown yet in the UFC. Michael Chandler hasn't, so it's hard to know what's going to happen here. But this being a 3-round fight and not a 5-round fight, in my opinion, Chandler would be stupid not to wrestle here.
Yeah, he would. I'd say so, but I don't know, man. Even if he does, like Gaethje's takedown defense is really good, but like you mentioned, if he does get it down to the mat, like there's a good chance Chandler can submit him. Chandler is a black belt, right?
Yeah, and it's just the path of least resistance, because like I say, man, this guy Gaethje, his calf kicks are absolutely vicious. You can't take more than 3 or 4 of those. You know, I mean, if you're standing with Justin Gaethje, you're thinking that this guy who's incredibly durable, he's a warrior, you're just thinking that he's going to drop before you. And those are the kind of fights that shorten the length of your career, being in the cage with Justin Gaethje and deciding to strike with him. I mean, what did Khabib do? Khabib was talking about, that guy hit me harder than anybody else in the rest of my career, and I just decided I'm going to take him down. And it was easy once he did.
Yeah, for sure. I just didn't like how Chandler looked after that first round of Oliveira. Like, the dude was tired, and he didn't go for any takedowns. I mean, he almost finished Oliveira. Maybe that had something to do with it, but he's now 35 years old. He's getting up there. We'll see what happens, but I think eventually Justin Gaethje does knock him out at some point. I don't know if he's going to wrestle. I really don't know if Chandler's going to wrestle. If he does, I think that's smart. I think it's really smart, but we'll have to definitely see. I do have some donors in the chat, though. We have PSSA saying, put Kizaev in the ring with both Chimaev and Hasbulla. I don't know how that would end. Probably pretty badly. Anything with Kizaev probably ends really badly.
Anybody that gets in a cage with Chimaev, it's not going to go well for him.
We should put
Hasbulla would. I'm predicting Hasbulla loses.
We should put Chimaev in the cage with Kizaev and then not stop the fight.
Yeah, and then have Steve Mazzagatti be the referee. How about that? Now, who wouldn't tune in for that? Now, I'm the idea guy here, you know? I mean, we're talking about, we got Fat John and Huggy Bear. That hasn't even been made yet. And that is going to be awesome. Fat John and Huggy Bear coming this spring to Netflix.
I like it. I'm looking forward to it and looking forward to hopefully getting at least a little bit of a cut when it does get released. And then we have Tajik Bey. We have the GOAT of MMA betting and the GOAT of the MMA community with the 499 donor. Appreciate that, Tajik. Hopefully you did well over the weekend. So we'll take a look at the odds. So we see that Justin Gaethje, lots of steam's been coming in on him. He opened at minus 140. He's currently minus 195. Michael Chandler opened up plus 120. He's currently plus 170. So lots of money is coming in on Gaethje. The line keeps getting wider and wider and wider. Don't know how wide it's going to get, but yeah, I'm not in love with the price tag. To be honest, I'm really not. Especially like if Weezy's saying if Chandler does come out here and wrestle, could potentially have some success. Also, Chandler has a lot of power in his own right, and we have seen Gaethje knocked out a couple times. And Gaethje's very, very, very hittable and absorbs a ton of punches as well. So. Yeah, I don't know if I love the price tag, but what I do love is some violence in this fight. I think the under 2.5 rounds is going to be something I'm very heavy on, or the fight doesn't go to decision, especially. No odds out on that yet, but that's something I've kind of circled. I'm definitely thinking violence here. I think someone gets finished one way or another.
Yeah, I definitely agreed. Now, I'm really shocked that there are no props anywhere on a Sunday night before, a pay-per-view card that's really, really being looked forward to here. We at least had some stuff last week, but this week, these guys are slacking, man. I am not happy with the folks at Five Dimes and Bet Online who usually get out lines a little bit quicker than this.
Yeah, like this is like there's been like 2 or 3 shows at the minimum, at the most, that have not had props out.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, either way, this fight's going to be very good, and I do think it ends in violence one way or another. But let us keep moving on to the co-main event. We have Rose Namajunas going against Weili Zhang. We have Zhang, who is 32 years old, 5'4", with a 63-inch reach. Rose Namajunas, she is 29 years old, 5'5", with a 65-inch reach. So Rose is going to have a 1-inch height advantage and also a 2-inch reach advantage. Something to mention, Zhang Weili has moved to fight ready for this camp, for what it's worth. So I think that's going to help out a bit here. But we take a look at Rose Namajunas. She is 4-1 in her last 5 fights, a knockout win over JJ, a decision win over JJ, a knockout loss to Jessica Andrade, a decision win against Jessica Andrade, and a knockout win over Zhang Weili in her very last fight. As far as Zhang Weili, she is 4-1 in her last 5 fights, a submission win over Jessica Aguilar, a decision win over Tisha Torres, a knockout win over Jessica Andrade, a split decision win over JJ, and then a knockout loss to Rose Namajunas. So very, very fun fight. We saw the first fight. Rose Namajunas knocked out Zhang Weili really early, and we'll see what happens again this time, Weezy. But what are you looking for this fight?
Yeah, this is it's going to be interesting. Let's just first talk about what somebody was just saying in the chat. Saying that the line just flipped because people seeing that Weili is training over there with Henry Cejudo. That's a big deal. I think one of the first things that Weili had to do was get the hell out of China, because she's a champion now. She can't be training there. There's nothing there for her. There's no talent on her level in China. And that's a big-ass country from what I've heard. So, this is something she's got to come over here. She's got to work on her whole game with some talent that she could potentially learn from. And that's going to be a big step here. Rose caught her with a really fantastic switch kick. Could be called a fluke. Some people might say it's a fluke. I'm not going to say it's a fluke because Rose is very talented and she's known for getting quick finishes. And that was just another one on her resume. So let's get into the stats here. Weili is actually more experienced, even though it's Rose who's actually fought the much better brand of competition. Very similar amounts of time in the pro cage. Rose has been a pro for about a year longer than Weili. Rose has got 11 UFC fights to 6 for Weili, and about twice as much time in the UFC cage for Rose. 70% finish rate for Rose, 50% by sub, 20% by knockout. But what's interesting is that's 70%, but 63% of those finishes at the UFC level. She's finishing 63. So 5 out of her 8 UFC wins have come inside the distance. Very impressive for the level of competition that Rose is fighting. While Weili has an 81% finish rate as a pro, 17, I believe, of 21 pro wins coming inside the distance. Both these ladies have been finished in half of their losses. Once by knockout for Weili, once by submission, once by knockout for Rose. If we look at the striking numbers, Rose landing just a little bit more than she absorbs, 4.12 to 4.03. Showing some pretty decent power for the weight class at landing a knockdown on 0.77% of the significant strikes that she lands, 0.47 knockdowns for 15 minutes, and really good striking defense at 60%. And Rose has never been knocked down, while Weili landing 6.44, absorbing 4.4. 45% striking accuracy, one knockdown in 391 significant strikes landed for Weili. That's 0.25 knockdowns per 15 minutes. She's been knocked down once, has Weili Zhang, and that was obviously by Rose Namajunas in the last fight. When we go to the grappling numbers here, Weili, 5 takedowns in 6 fights, only 15% control time for, but 5% control time against, so she's out-controlling her opponents. She's never been taken down, so that's a good thing. While Namajunas is getting over half of her takedown attempts, 16 takedowns in 11 fights. She averages 1.89 per 15 minutes and is getting 22.5% control time for and only allowing 8% control time against. But she does have only a 50% takedown defense. But I would say that she's probably got a really good get-up game because it looks like she's only spent about 10 minutes of her UFC career in control, being controlled, and that's on 9 takedowns and 18 takedown attempts. So yeah, definitely really good ground game for Rose. She's done very good out controlling her opponents, getting back up when she gets taken down, and threatening with submissions when she's on the bottom and on the top. If we look at the strength of schedule numbers here, I would say that they are very similar. Zhang's ratio is better, but Rose fighting the slightly more experienced brand of competition. And then Rose and her wins are better than Weili's, and the losses pretty similar here. But, Weili has only lost to Rose. Obviously, that's only the second loss in her career. So, yeah, a lot of this is very close on paper. It does look like this will probably be a striking match. And it's going to be close, man. It's going to be really close.
Yeah, for sure. Dan Goldstein talking about Rose having the better haircut. I'm not too sure. Did you see Zhang Weili's new haircut?
I did not.
Whew, it's looking good, man.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Did she dye it? What happened? I didn't even see it.
It's like really short.
Really short. And that's that you're talking about Zhang, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Rose has had that short hair for a long time. Is she growing hers back out?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, then, yeah, we're going to have a couple of short-haired crew cuts in here, banging it out for probably a good full 5 rounds this time. I don't want to, it's lazy to say that the second fight's going to happen exactly like the first. And now we've got Weili training at a new camp. We might see her not just improving her wrestling defense, but maybe going to the wrestling a little bit more. But I don't know if she wants to be on the ground with Rose. Rose is slick down there. Rose has got some submissions. 5 of her 10 wins by submission. So it's going to be interesting, man. I think Zhang, even though the numbers say that Rose has more power, I think that's with her catching people with kicks that they don't see coming. I think Weili's got the more powerful hands. I think she throws with more power. But Rose is very flexible, very fast, and the dexterity in her hips on that switch kick that knocked out Weili was just fantastic. I got to hear what way you're looking on this one, because this is really tough for me to call. I was on Weili the first time.
Yep, for sure. I do want to say shout out to Boston Nick in the chat. What is up, Boston Nick? So I went and taped the fight. At first, I had no interest in betting it. I thought I was just going to pass. I was on Zhang before as well. I actually did bet Zhang Weili. I forget what I bet her. I think -180 last time. And after like getting to the tape, I remembered exactly why I bet Zhang Weili. I mean, she is very, very good. Um, and I went back and watched some of Rose's stuff. And, you look back at the Andrade fight a couple fights ago. And if that fight was 5 rounds, like Andrade would have destroyed her. Like Rose won the first round clearly. The second round was closer. I still gave Rose the second round, but Andrade was like teeing off on her in the third round, and it was not looking good. Zhang Weili, she's somebody that, like you said, she has a ton of power. She has a ton of volume. I love the volume of Zhang, and I love that she has the cardio to back it up. She throws 14 strikes per minute and landing 6.4. Like that's phenomenal. And with Rose, yeah, Rose is probably the better technical striker, but like you said, I do give Zhang the power advantage there. I give Rose Namajunas the ground advantage. So, I didn't even think about, Zhang Weili going for takedowns here. I don't expect her to. If she does, I think she can absolutely get them. But like you said, Weezy, is she going to want to go down to the mat with Rose Namajunas? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
As a Zhang Weili better, I hope not. What I'm kind of thinking is I think Rose is going to make this very competitive early on. I think Rose might even, take off a round or two of Zhang Weili. But I think as the fight goes on, I think that the damage is going to add up. Rose is definitely going to be wearing it. Zhang Weili hits very, very hard. And in terms of the numbers, yeah, it's going to be very close early on. But I think as the fight goes on, I think Rose is going to, take a lot of damage. Zhang's going to be somebody that can keep up that crazy pace for a full 5 rounds. And I think that's huge there. But yeah, like you said earlier, Weezy, you cannot, every single fight is different. I don't know hopefully people don't expect Rose to come out here and knock out Zhang in the first round. She's going to be prepared for that head kick. She's fighting at fight ready. I do like that quite a bit. So yeah, I bet her last time. It did not work out. We didn't really get to see the fight, but I did pull the trigger again at plus 100. And then a couple hours after that, the line did flip in favor of Weili, and we now see that Weili opened up minus 110. She went up to as high as plus 105. She's now at minus 115, and then Rose Namajunas is minus 105 now. Kind of feel like I might be on an island here with this Zhang Weili pick, but it looks like a lot of people in the chat do agree with me. But I am expecting to see a lot of love for Rose. I did pull the trigger early at plus money. I don't know where the line's going to go. I kind of have a feeling it'll go in favor of Rose, but I don't know. It looks like now money is coming in on Zhang Weili. But yeah, I like Zhang Weili to get the win. I think, like I said, early in the fight, it's going to be very competitive, but I think Zhang Weili is going to put it on her as the fight goes on. And again, we have seen Rose slow down. Especially in the Andrade fight. Like I said, if that Andrade fight was 5 rounds, she'd clearly lose that fight. Even their fight in general, that was 3 rounds. It was very close. It was a split decision, I believe. But yeah, give me Zhang Weili for a decision win, but maybe a potential late finish as well. We see that the fight doesn't go to decision. We actually have props on these co-main event. The fight doesn't go to decision, minus 110. The fight goes to decision is minus 120. I don't think I'll touch that. Like I said, I can see a Zhang Weili, maybe a late finish. But outside of that, I probably am leaning towards a decision. And then as far as the under is set at 4.5 rounds, the under 4.5 rounds, minus 115. The over 4.5 rounds is minus 115 as well. No strong leans there, but yeah, like I said, I do have a plus 100 bet on Zhang Weili. I bet her at minus 180. Didn't work out. Let's see if it works out this time. I think she does beat Rose Namajunas here. But yeah, regardless, it's a very good fight. It's a close fight. It's going to be competitive, but I think down the stretch, Zhang Weili pulls it off. And if it's a close fight, I feel like Zhang Weili is going to be landing the harder shots. We see it oftentimes that maybe in terms of the volume, Rose lands more volume, but I feel like Zhang Weili is going to be landing the harder shots, and judges seem to like that. So give me Zhang Weili for the win, and give me Zhang Weili probably by decision, maybe late finish.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of Rose early or Weili late, and we just saw Weili's heart in that young Jacek fight. This girl is never going to quit. That was an all-timer of a fight. Well, we have seen Namajunas finished in 2 of her 4 losses, and in 2 of her 3 UFC losses. So, I could see this fight finishing inside the distance again. I think, at minus 110 or minus 105, is it?
Yeah, I was like minus 110 fight doesn't go.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this one's going to finish inside the distance because, these girls are going to put a pace on. And as the fight goes on, I think somebody's going to wind up finding the door in this one. This is going to be a banger. I can't wait for it. But my pick, I like the fact that Zhang is training in America with Henry Cejudo here. I think that's going to maybe be that extra step that she needs, in order to survive the early rounds here and pull this out late. So I think I'm going to go with Zhang as well.
Yep, irregardless saying JJ beat Zhang, and she did outland her. I personally scored it for JJ, but I think I was a little bit biased because I was like all over that week on DK. But no, I think they scored it for Zhang because, again, like she was landing the harder shots. And we see time and time again, like Bobby Green outlanded Fiziev 150 to 104. And who did the judges give it to? They gave it to Fiziev because, he was landing the harder shots. But yeah, great fight. Very great fight. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, let's see what happens here. But we'll move on to the main event. Before we do so, if you guys can please smash that like. Had a lot of people hanging out throughout the duration of the stream. Really do appreciate you guys and appreciate the guys and girls watching later in the week as well. And yeah, so we have a main event here. We have Kamaru Usman going against Colby Covington. Me and Weezy will be going live on my channel. Going to give Weezy some time to get some food in him, walk his dog, and then we'll probably be going live maybe like 10 o'clock Eastern time, 10:30. So just look out for that. But always a fun time doing this main event deep dives with you guys. But we have a banger. Like, this is probably, to be honest, this is probably my most anticipated fight of the year. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington 2. Like, this fight's going to be phenomenal. I mean, the first fight was phenomenal. I think this one's going to be just as good, if not better. We have Kamaru Usman, who's 34 years old, 6 foot, with a 76-inch reach. Colby Covington, 33 years old, 5'11", with a 72-inch reach. Kamaru Usman, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Had the decision win over Tyron Woodley, a knockout win over Colby Covington, a decision win over Jorge Masvidal, a knockout win over Gilbert Burns, and a knockout win over Jorge Masvidal. So Kamaru Usman has actually had 3 fights since he last fought Colby Covington, and it looks like he kind of leveled up in the striking. Like, his striking looked, unreal in the Gilbert Burns fight. I know it's Gilbert Burns, doesn't have the best chin, all that, but he was like dropping Gilbert Burns with jabs. Like, Kamaru Usman's striking has improved leaps and bounds. And then on top of that, he went out there and knocked out Jorge Masvidal. Who knocks out Jorge Masvidal? Nobody, except Kamaru Usman. He was the very first person to knock out Masvidal in the UFC. Very, very impressed with what I'm seeing for Kamaru Usman in terms of his striking and how it's really coming along. As far as Colby Covington, he has 4-1 in his last 5 fights, a decision win over Damian Maia, a decision win over Rafael dos Anjos, a decision win over Robbie Lawler, a knockout loss to Kamaru Usman, and then a knockout win over Tyron Woodley. So Covington has had 1 fight since the Usman fight, whereas Usman has had 3. Colby Covington, probably one of my favorite fighters. I mean, this is a guy that he seems to piss a lot of people off, but I just think it's hilarious how he does it. And I just love his fighting style. Like, he brings a crazy, crazy pace. This fight's going to be fun. I think it's going to be probably one of the best fights of the year, potentially, and I'm looking forward to it so much. Weezy, what are you feeling about on this fight?
I can't wait, man. I mean, Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington are both exactly the type of fighter that I absolutely just love betting on. I don't miss opportunities to bet on these type of fighters, these control time monsters with the conditioning and the wrestling pedigree to back up that kind of wrestling heavy game plan that just wears out your opponents and eventually breaks them. And even if it doesn't, you rack up 20 minutes of control time in a 25-minute fight and just, land like 300 ground strikes. And, both of these guys are so good at what they do. And they're both really at the prime of their careers. They're both incredible. There's not a lot of difference here anywhere. We do have Kamaru Usman with a very significant 4-inch reach advantage here. That is a big deal. If we look at the experience numbers are negligible. They are almost identical. In terms of how these guys finish fights, almost identical. In terms of the fact that both of these guys have never lost by decision is very interesting in my opinion. Kamaru Usman's been subbed in his only loss, but that was a long time ago. And Colby Covington has been finished in his 2 losses, once by guillotine choke to Warlley Alves, and then Kamaru Usman finishing him in the 5th round of their first fight. So let's look at the numbers here. Both of these guys putting up really impressive numbers, but Usman's striking numbers are better. Usman landing 4.63, only absorbing 2.4. He's 54% accurate. He's landing a knockdown on 0.77% of the total significant strikes that he lands. He's showing 58% striking defense, and he's never been knocked down. Colby Covington lands 4.12 per minute and only absorbs 2.86 per minute. 38.47% striking accuracy is not good. Colby Covington has only managed one knockdown in his 13 UFC fights. So he's not a guy that has power standing up. And 55.5% striking defense. He's been knocked down twice in 568 significant strikes absorbed. Both of them, I believe, by Kamaru Usman. And then we look at the wrestling numbers. The numbers that surprisingly in this matchup will probably have absolutely no importance whatsoever. So let's make sure to go over them. Usman, 52% control time for, 1.36% control time against. Colby Covington, 50% control time for, 2.35% control time against. Colby Covington has actually been taken down 6 times in his UFC career, while Kamaru Usman has shown 100% takedown defense in 20 takedown attempts against. If we look at these strength of schedule numbers, it's Kamaru Usman by a slight margin overall, and the wins are a little bit better for Usman as well. And the losses, since Usman has never lost, we can't talk about that. And Covington really only lost to Usman here. The Alves fight, he took on short notice with a broken rib. So, we'll call that one. We'll give him a free pass on that one. Plus, it was an awfully long time ago. But, so when I was watching the first fight back, I was trying to say to myself, okay, don't be lazy. How does this fight change this time? What's different this time around? Because if this fight takes place the same way it took place last time, it's really hard to see a path for Colby because he's not going to be using his wrestling. He's going to be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. He's at a power disadvantage. He throws more volume, but the way that Usman is landing with power these days is that volume is not enough to overcome the reach advantage and the power advantage coming back at him. Is Colby going to try to wrestle in a 5-round fight? Is Kamaru going to try to wrestle Colby in a 5-round fight? I don't see Kamaru trying to wrestle here. I think if somebody has to wrestle here, it's got to be Colby, right? Because he's at the 4-inch reach disadvantage. He's at the power disadvantage. This guy's knocking out Masvidal. Masvidal's a way better striker than Colby Covington is. So, what's the wrinkle this time? How does Colby win this fight? Is he going to wrestle this time, Brady? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. Can't talk. My bad. Yeah, I don't think so either, Weezy. I think it's probably going to, kind of look a little bit like the first fight where, neither guy attempted one takedown. I went back and watched the fight as well. Obviously pretty important. It was 2 years ago. I think Usman, striking has actually improved a lot since then. But you take a look at the early rounds. I noticed that Colby Covington, he had a lot of success early. And you take a look at some of the volume that was thrown in that first couple rounds. So Colby Covington actually attempted 111 strikes in that first round, landed 39. And in the second round, Colby Covington attempted 97, landed 41. And in both of those rounds, he was having a lot of success against Kamaru Usman. But we see as the fight went on in the third round, Colby Covington only attempted 51 strikes in that third round, only landed 8. And I think that was because, Kamaru Usman was hurting Colby Covington. I believe he broke his jaw. Do you remember what point he broke his jaw? What round was that? It
was the third round. So Colby kind of took the third round off.
Yeah.
And that's when Kamaru, that was up until the fifth round. The third round was the only clear round in the fight. Usman absolutely wins the third round. Yes. You can debate the fourth, you can debate the second, you can debate the first, but Usman won that third. So yeah, it's Colby's going to have to make some kind of improvements here. Either he's going to have to get his gas tank to the point where he can actually wrestle for 3 out of 5 rounds. And then you're wrestling against a guy that's got just as good of a wrestling pedigree as you do and with 100% takedown defense. So what's the point? Mm-hmm. God, it's so I'm a huge Colby Covington fan. This guy cracks me up. I love the personality change. I'm actually one of these guys that enjoys watching him piss other people off. I know he's not popular with a lot of people, but Colby backs it up. And I think there's one man on the face of the planet right now that beats him at 170, and that's Usman. And some might say Chimaev as well, and I don't have a problem with that. But this guy Usman is just, it's hard to see him losing.
Yeah, definitely. Like even if Colby decides to, hey, I'm gonna wrestle for 5 rounds here, like, is he gonna have success? I know
Yeah.
Covington's wrestling is phenomenal, but Usman's takedown defense is like legit. So yeah, what I noticed though was Covington, when he was having success, he was throwing volume and a ton of volume, but whenever he was like not having success is when he kind of slowed the fight down a little bit. And whenever the fight slowed down at least a little bit, that's when we saw Kamaru Usman just like pick apart Colby Covington very easily. And I think the biggest factor, kind of like the last fight, the Zhang Weili Rose fight, I think that, Covington probably does, match the volume of Usman here. I think it'll be very close and competitive in terms of the numbers, but we're going to see clearly that somebody hits very, very hard in Kamaru Usman, and Colby Covington. He doesn't hit hard. He's more of a volume guy, not much power to him, but especially nowadays, like you said, Usman, I wasn't sold on his power, but now I am fully sold on his power. This guy hits very hard. And he's going to get a lot of opportunities to hurt Colby Covington here. So, yeah, I think the pick for me is Kamaru Usman. I think a lot of people are going to argue that line's off because you go back and look at the first fight. There's a good debate that it was 2-2 going into the fifth.
Mm-hmm. Could have been 3-1 Colby, could have been 3-1 Kamaru. But I think one judge had it. I think all three judges had it differently. One had it 3-1 Colby, one had it 2-2, one had it 3-1 Usman. So yeah, that's the thing here. Can Colby find that next gear, make the fifth round close, and then all of a sudden you don't want to be holding that minus 300 Kamaru Usman ticket if this goes to decision and it looks like the first fight did. You're counting on Kamaru finding that big shot.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, the money. I can tell you one thing. First of all, I'm not doing parlays on this card. But Usman opened up minus 225. He's now minus 275. Colby Covington opened up plus 190. He's now plus 235. I mean, yeah, I get it. I guess I just feel like this fight's going to be a lot closer than the line does indicate. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that?
Yeah, man. So the fight was close. The Colby Covington Kamaru Usman first fight was close until it was no longer close. The question is like, even if that fight goes to decision, does Colby win?
Yeah.
I think like the line is a little bit wide, but I also think Kamaru Usman maybe wins this fight 75 to 80% of the time. So is it too wide? Dude, it's hard. I mean, the value is on Colby. You're saying if you're betting Colby, he's just got to avoid the one big shot to the chin. And then if he can outvolume him for 3 rounds, maybe if he finds one takedown, or maybe if he gets top position or cage control for 3 minutes, maybe he can win 3 of these 5 rounds. But I just see the fight finishing potential completely in the hands of Kamaru Usman here.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a finish in this fight, there's no debate about it. I think it's from the Kamaru Usman side. I really would be shocked if Colby Covington finished Usman, which brings me to the lines here. So Colby Covington by decision. Curious to see what that is. Yeah, Colby Covington by decision is plus 500.
What?
Yeah,
he's not knocking anybody out.
He's not knocking anybody out. He's not submitting anybody. Decision.
Yeah. See, now that's compelling. That's compelling. Hey, I took a plus 500 decision ticket on Frankie Edgar against Sandhagen. So maybe I could take Donald Trump's favorite fighter as a plus 500 underdog here against Kamaru Usman and hope that, because it's just such a bad matchup for Colby. This guy Usman's got conditioning and wrestling for days, and he's got power that Colby doesn't have. He really has the answer to everything that Colby brings.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, if you guys like Colby, I think that's how he wins. Plus 500. Kamaru Usman by decision is sitting at plus 190. And then Kamaru Usman by knockout is plus 155. But Dan brings up something interesting. The fight goes to decision. First of all, this is going to be very, very sweaty. Plus 100. I personally do think it goes to decision or a late knockout for Kamaru Usman. I very well could see that. But a line I was kind of interested in is going to be the over 2.5 rounds. It's sitting at minus 185. I think this fight gets extended more often than not. I'd be kind of surprised if Usman did finish Colby early. like I said, I think if there's a finish, it's going to be like later in the fight after the damage kind of adds up, or even a decision even then. So I'd like the over 2.5 rounds, minus 185. The over 3.5, it gets tricky. Over 3.5 is minus 135. I'd kind of be looking towards that over 2.5 just to be safe. I think it does, get into that the later rounds. So any thoughts on the overs? Any thoughts on the unders?
I don't even know if I'm going to touch it because I think Kamaru's got power in every single round, and it doesn't. I really don't think he's got to wait till the fifth to knock out Colby because I think the power is there at any point for Kamaru. I mean, that shot that he landed to knock out Masvidal in their second fight was just so clean, so perfect. I mean, if he hits Colby with that, Colby's going down. So I'm not going to touch the time props here. I would be interested in Usman by knockout and Colby Covington by decision. Those would be the lines that I'll be looking at.
Yep, I think it's a good spot for Kamaru Usman here, regardless of the line. Let my Sunday fix with Weezy and DFS. Hit the like, appreciate the donut, Walter. Thank you for hanging out. Do appreciate that a ton. Smash the like. I agree with Walter there. All right, so I think we about did it. Weezy went through a good amount of fights, talked about some spots. The lines did not come out, which is surprising. Still no lines for a big pay-per-view card. Weird.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
Yeah.
You know, we love our audience, and our audience deserves better than this. Not to mention you and I putting on the show. We deserve Bet Online and 5 Dimes to have their shit together when there's UFC 268 Usman versus Covington too. But you know, we deserve better than this. Our viewers deserve better than this, but they didn't get it, and it's a shame. But we need these lines to come out soon.
Yeah, hopefully they do with like by tonight. But we'll have to see for sure. So yeah, guys, we did it. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Had a good amount of people in here. Me and Weezy will be going live on my channel within like the next 2 hours. So look out for it. We'll be doing a main event deep dive, getting deeper into the fight. I'm about to record my full card breakdown and prediction video within like the next couple hours as well. Maybe some DraftKings videos also there. So yeah, busy night for me tonight. And then I leave for Nashville tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm running out of time, but hopefully I get everything done. So Weezy, let them know where they can find you and what you have going on throughout the week.
Yeah, you can find me right here on Pub Sports Radio every Sunday night and every Tuesday at 6 p.m. for the DraftKings show. And then also, I do the main event breakdown on your channel every week. We'll be doing that shortly. And then you can find me on Twitter at MMA Weezy. And you can find me on YouTube at my channel, Uncle Weezy. I do balls deep breakdowns of fights every week, and I also do a full card breakdown every Tuesday night after the Contender Series, 10 p.m. Central Time, called Just the Tip. Check me out there.
Sounds good. Check him out. Weezy trying to get to 1K subs by the end of the year. Almost there. That'd be sweet. But yeah, guys, appreciate you all in the chat. See you guys there. Roy, Dan, Nathan, Walter, Cayman, all you guys hanging out. Jack Attack, as always, irregardless. Thank you for hanging out. Smash a like on your way out. We did hit 100 likes by the end of the show, which is always very nice. Shout out to you guys. Do appreciate that a lot. We will see you very soon. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers, YouTube, DFS by the numbers. And good luck for UFC 268. This card is very, very good. Let's make some money. And hopefully, what's his name? Kisayev?
Vyacheslav Kisiev. Boo.
Hopefully that jackass isn't there. If he is, I'd cash out right away.
Yeah, me too, man. They better not let that guy anywhere near a cage anytime soon.
I don't think he will. But yep, guys, hopefully none of him. But good luck. Let's make some money for 268.